call the meeting to order. Let us begin. Everybody, please rise. I'd like to ask Ms. Hillary Gordon, one of our semi-finalists, to lead us in this salute to the flag. Birthday girl, Ms. Evans, to lead a roll call, please, Ms. Evans. Excuse me. Present. Okay, we have 8 programs here tonight. Again, I know we have a large crowd. We have many students here. This is one of my favorite nights of the year when we get to recognize both academics and athletics. So, we have quite a bit to do tonight. We have a couple of reports before we get to the presentations. Very briefly, what I would like to say is where's Coach Stover? Coach Stover never listens to me, but I see Coach. Coach, for us to get into the Inquirer week after week after week, this was Sunday's edition. I'm so proud of what our young men did on the field. Coach Stover will say, I remember, Coach, when we were 0-11, and I would go to every game that I can. And this year, many of us, again, went to every game. So, again, we are so proud of our football players, our other teams, and, of course, our academic students that we're recognizing tonight. I'd like to move right on to Ms. Hirschford, the student government report.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. There have been many exciting happenings around the Cardinal Nest. We are proud to acknowledge many of our accomplished academic and athletic achievements that have taken place this fall. Just this past Saturday, our Cardinal High School football team season came to an end after an incredible run. The Cardinals won the PIAA District 1 for the first time in school history and played commendably against the tough Parkland team in the state semifinals. We are so proud of these athletes for their tremendous mark not only on our community, but on the statewide football arena of public, private, and parochial schools. The girls volleyball team also broke the school record this season, winning the Suburban 1 Conference for the first time and ending Upper Marion's 17-year streak of winning the league. The following teams also won the Suburban 1 Conference: girls tennis, boys and girls soccer, and girls cross country. Also, congratulations to the National Marion semifinalists and commended scholars being recognized this evening. Though many talented Cardinals are here tonight, the accolades for our students do not end there. From December 3rd to the 5th, the Upper Dublin Music Department attended the Pennsylvania State Thespian Conference, where a select group performed the one-act play, A White Room in My Remembering, at this large convention, and 4 of our students received either past scholarships or other top statewide awards. Our thespians are now rehearsing for their 3rd show of the year, Wizard of Oz, which will be coming to the EDHS stage on January 16th and 17th at 2 p.m. Tickets will be sold online again, and the link will be posted on the district page closer to the event. And last Thursday evening, the music department hosted its annual winter concert at our Performing Arts Center. Our singers and musicians surely wowed the crowd and drew in department graduates to sing the annual alumni rendition of the sleigh ride as well. To spread holiday cheer, SGA will be selling candygrams over the next week. High school students can purchase candy canes at lunches for 50 cents each or 3 for $1 to send to friends throughout the high school. These treats will be delivered in homeroom on the last day of school before winter break. Congratulations again to all the students being recognized this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Hirschford, for your report. Okay, let's move on now to the superintendent's report. Dr. Deborah Wheeler.
Thank you. I would like to add my congratulations to our National Merit semifinalists and commended students. This is a tremendous achievement, and we are very proud of all of you. And also congratulations to all of our fall sports teams. We certainly have had a wonderful season. I would like to say to our Cardinal football team, congratulations following an exceptional season. You have set a standard for achievement that all future Cardinal football teams will emulate. You played well with good sportsmanship, and at the end of the game on Saturday, although you weren't disappointed, you demonstrated such poise and grace. I was as proud then as I was throughout the entire winning season. On behalf of our school community, thank you. Saturday was also a very important day for our music students, who, many of whom auditioned in the Pennsylvania Music Association District 11 competition. We had remarkable results there as well. 8 of our students were selected for the PMEA District 11 Band for 2016, and 8 students qualified as well for the PMEA District 11 Orchestra. This is the highest number of Upper Dublin students who have qualified for these honors, and that includes both Montgomery and Bucks County. So on behalf, again, of our school community, thank you for your hard work and for setting such a wonderful standard and being such role models for all of our music students throughout the district. I wanted to announce briefly before we get to the awards that although Mr. Horn could not be here this evening, he will be here next month to accept an award on behalf of his work with the band from the board. So I wanted to be sure to share that this evening during our formal awards ceremony. I wanted to very, very briefly bring the board up to date following my recent travel as part of the Educational Bridge Program with the College Board and Hanban, the China's education agency. My recent trip to China was part of that delegation. And here's just one example. We visited 7 schools. Here is my student guide as we were going into one of the schools in China. It was very impressive, but I still left there very impressed with what we do here in the United States. And although I want to be brief this evening, I would like to present more information, Dr. Ludwig, at a future education committee meeting, if I may do so. Very briefly, the follow-up. We are working with Jenkintown. Dr. Tim Wade, their superintendent, was also on the trip. We're following up with potentially creating a summer program that we would like to offer to students in both districts. So I will keep the education committee updated as we move forward with possibly being able to do that for our students. And finally, and very briefly, you may have heard the reauthorization of the bill formerly known as No Child Left Behind has been finalized. You will no longer hear us talking about NCLB. We will be talking about ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. Briefly, this legislation returns a lot of decision-making to the states. There will be some flexibility for assessment, although we still will be required to administer one test in grades 3 through 8 and 1 through high school. States are going to have much more flexibility in how they approach that. This will then have some effect on our educator effectiveness, the new evaluation system that is put in place. Again, the state will have to make some decisions about the degree of alignment with standardized tests as a measure of success for an educator. There are some significant grant funding decisions. There should be some extra money flowing to the states, and the states should have a little bit more flexibility in how that is spent. AYP, Adequate Yearly Progress, as a measure of school success and district success, is now gone. Very briefly, Pennsylvania has now several significant decisions to make with this increased flexibility that what they have, and with the lessening of what many of us consider to be federal overreach into legislation about schools. We believe that we are certainly moving in a very more positive manner. And I will be able to share more information with the Education Committee as well as we move forward and the Commonwealth makes some decisions based on this. That is my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wheeler. We have 3 presentations tonight. The first one will be the academic recognition, the athletic recognition. Following that, we'll take a brief recess We will then have a report done by Ms. Morrison on the annual district data presentation, and then we will have a first presentation of the preliminary general fund budget for the school district of Upper Dublin. So without any further ado, I would like to present the proud principal of the Upper Dublin High School, Mr. Bob Schultz, to lead us.
And welcome to the 2015 Student Recognition Program. To members of the board and administrators, thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce to you some of Upper Dublin's finest. Over 30 years ago, an assistant principal came up with a simple slogan for Upper Dublin High School. It continues to this day, it's frequently referenced, and it reads very simply, excellence in academics, activities, and athletics. With the overflow crowd here tonight, we take a moment to celebrate our students who have demonstrated excellence in 2 of those areas. Parents, families, friends, thank you all very much for coming to support our scholars and our student athletes. On a logistical note, students, when your name is called, please come forward and then proceed to shake hands with the administration and with the school. We will begin with the recognition of our National Merit Awardees. Bringing those students to your attention is our wonderful coordinator of guidance, Mrs. Donna Ward.
Recognize our National Merit semifinalists and commended students. Before I begin, I would ask, conclusion of my presentation, if I could have both groups meet me in the back of that group picture of both groups. We'll begin the recognition of our National Merit semifinalists. Of the 1.5 million students taking the PSAT, 50,000 with the highest selection index scores, critical reading, mathematics, writing, and writing qualify for recognition for the National Merit Scholarship Program. Approximately 16,000 students, or 1% of all test takers, qualify as National Merit semifinalists. This year's Upper Dublin semifinalists are, please come up as I tell your name, Calvin Chan. Letters of commendation and recognition of their outstanding academic progress. Students, as I call your name, please come up to be recognized. Jillian Axelrod. Gabrielle Bloom. Evan Rockledge. Hannah Dorsey. Justin Ernstler. Jordan Friedland. Young Han. Nobel Render. Austin Lowe's. Andrew McDermott. Jacob Gibbons. Alexander Buehler. Adam Simon. Benjamin Stern. Danielle Sternberg. Jordan Zabardo. Emily Wan. And Joanna Sitel. Could take a step back and recognize Harry Z, who is here. He's a National Merit Second Honors. And Grace Palmer. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the program. And if I can meet those two groups in the back.
Our program now shifts from academics to athletics. It has been an incredible fall sports season, and it is my honor to introduce to you our outstanding, and for tonight, our very busy athletic director, Mr. Eric Greiner.
Before I get started, this is where we'd like to announce
One more student that's here, National Merit Commended student Elena Press.
All right, good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity opportunity for us to be here this evening. We've had an unbelievable fall season, to say the least, earning a total of 6 Suburban 1 American Conference championships and 1 IAA District 1 championship. This success is impossible without the hard work, commitment, and the sacrifices that our coaches and student athletes make in an attempt to produce a championship season. I would like to start off this evening by giving everyone a round of applause. The first team that we're recognizing this evening has made this event a tradition, winning a conference the last 7 consecutive years, is our girls cross country team. And here to talk more about their season is head coach Tony Gianmarco.
Thank you, Mr. Greiner. Obviously, we're feeling the weather tonight, so I'm trying to keep this short and sweet for all of you and myself. I want to thank Dr. Vinowitz and the board, Dr. Miller, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Greiner for hosting us this evening. I'd also like to congratulate the other coaches and their staffs and their teams for being here tonight, winning the Suburban 1 League American Conference Championship. John Topper, Carol Hackenbrack, Derek Priest, Paul Choi, and Brent Stover. Obviously, what the football team did this season was incredible. It was historic. In addition to that, I'd like to just highlight the girls volleyball team, Paul Choi. Paul was a student of mine 10 years ago, ran cross country for me, and I was really happy to see him and his team be so successful this year. So a shout out to Paul. In terms of the girls cross country team, I'll be honest, this was a difficult season for me as a coach. After last year, we had 7 girls returning to the team, and that was a bit scary for me. And I was hoping to get more girls to come out, and they did. Our team grew to about 21, and that was great, but with that came some obstacles. Of the 21 girls, 14 had never run cross country before. So that was a bit of an issue. And it was a struggle at some points, getting them to rise to the level that I wanted them to, and I thought they could. But through hard work, dedication, and with the help of the co-captains, Sarah Smith and Lauren Haggerty, the team did round into shape. We finished 7-0 in the conference, 8-0 overall. We won the 7th consecutive Suburban 1 League American Conference Championship, and 3 girls received first team all-league honors. They were Sarah Smith, who's a junior, Sophie Gustafson, who's a junior, and Sage Gustafson, who's a sophomore. So now I'd like to introduce the team. We'll start with the seniors. Laura Martin, Hannah Dorsey, Bryn Reese, and senior co-captain Martin Howard. Juniors Emily Stewart, Sophie Gustafson, Haley Marcus, Alexa Kirkich, Charlotte Wachter, and junior co-captain Sarah Smith. Sophomores are Sadie Gustafson, Rebecca O'Toole, Grace Murphy, and Julie Pincus. And our crew of freshmen, it was nice to see we had 6 girls come out, which is 5 more than the year before. Maddie Spaulding, Zoe Kaufman, Ellie Crane, Amelia Shatner, Michelle Wright, and Juliette Dick. So again, I'd like to not only congratulate the girls cross country, but all of our teams that are here in attendance. It was a great fall season. Hopefully the winter season is going to be just as successful in spring. I look forward to seeing you guys here next year.
have the team captains, Aubrey Haggerty and Sarah Smith, come back up front. On behalf of the Suburban One League for the 7th year in a row, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. Coach Jim Marco would please come up. On behalf of the school board and the athletic department, I'd like to present to you this plaque to commemorate your championship season. We appreciate your commitment and dedication that you provided to our program and our student athletes. Thank you. Congratulations. The second team that we're recognizing this evening continues to add to their championship streak and is back for a 3rd year in a row as our girls soccer team. To share more about their exciting performances this season is head coach John Thomas.
First off, I'd like to echo the sentiments of Mr. DeMarco and congratulate all of the athletes here collecting awards, as well as the great students that collecting the academic awards. And a special congratulations to Coach Stover and the football team. And I honestly say a season like this is what we all aspire to, truly all do. And on behalf of the girls soccer team, I'd like to thank our board and administrators for all that they do behind the scenes to allow us to put a good product on the field and have the success that we've had. You know, we have a lot of fun out there. We get the glory of nights like this, but we realize it's a whole community behind us that allows that to happen. So we want to thank everybody in the room. And as far as this season, you know, again, for the 3rd year in a row, we're pleased to be here. We had a great season, a great group of girls. Behind the senior leadership of Becky Haber, Rebecca Watson, Devin McGarrett, Erin McGuffall, Megan Boyle, Olivia Ness, and Kate McCabe. I'd say that this team was defined by our heart and consistency. After our big wins, the girls kept their focus and never looked past the next game. After our tough losses, the team kept faith in themselves, kept their heads up, and always bounced back and took care of business on the next game day. And it was this character that set us apart from our rivals. Well, this year's seniors graduate as 3 times champions. That's wonderful for them, and we're happy to send them off on such a high note. But as importantly, I think what they've done is left a blueprint for our hugely talented underclassmen, letter winners, and our rising undefeated junior varsity girls. So with that, we have all the ingredients in place to hope to be back in years to come. So thank you to everyone tonight, Mr. Greiner, administrators, board. Thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to announce the 2015 champion Lady Cardinal soccer team. Megan Boyle. Shannon Lee. Victoria Hoffman. Victoria Ariel. Sydney Walker. Peyton Clark. Evan McGarrett. Kate McGee. Olivia Ness. Talia Nish. Erin O'Brien. Anna Green. Leslie Schreiber. Lindsay Schreiber. Tara Supley. Erin Frelfall. Kirsten Frelfall. Caroline Wall. Rebecca Watson.
And the team captains, Rebecca Haber, Devin McGarity, and Rebecca Watson, please come up front. On behalf of the Spurwood League, I'd like to present to you once again the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. And Coach Tucker, please come back in front. I'd like to present to you this plaque on behalf of the school board and athletic department for your championship season. Thank you for the time and commitment that you've given to the girls soccer program. Congratulations. The third team we're recognizing this evening has returned back to the top of the conference where it hopes to remain as our boys soccer team. To share more about the accomplishments this season is head coach Derek Bruce.
First of all, I'd like to thank the school board for their invitation tonight and their continued support for all the sports programs in Upper Dublin. And secondly, I'd like to congratulate all the other Upper Dublin coaches and teams here on their successful seasons. There are many different things that have to come together to enable a team to have a successful year. This year's boys soccer team is our ability to marry the individual skills and talents of our players with a team spirit that kept us together when things weren't going our way and got our players fighting for their teammates for everything every game. In a season where there have been many highlights, there were two tough games against Plymouth Whitemarsh, an overtime win against Wizard Hickey that Kingston Conference tied for us. But if I were to pick just one, however, it would be our district playoff win against Betson. It was a game where everything we had worked on all year seemed to come together, one of the most complete soccer performances I have ever seen. It was a combination of both individual brilliance, great team play, and ended in an 8-0 win. It was also a game where every single player in our squad was able to contribute to the team and epitomise our season as a whole. Finally, I would like to recognise the contribution of all our seniors this year and wish them good luck and all the best for the future as they go off to college at the end of the school year. I'd like now to introduce to you the boys soccer team 2015. Jerry Barlow. Nick Brown. Josh Randall, Justin Green, Tom Hoffman, Kevin Hochak, Brian Huggins, Thomas Chorley, Andy Katz, Nick Pasolsa, Jose Calvecchio, Jed Rosen, Josh Shakespeare, Clemente Sarah, please go. Take good passes. And second.
If I could please ask the team captains, Josh Franklin, Justin Green, and Jake Woodruff. On behalf of the Super Bowl League, I'd like to present to you the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. And Coach Priest, if you could please return the podium. On behalf of the school board and the athletic department, I'd like to present to you this plaque to commemorate your first conference championship. We appreciate your dedication that you have to our youth soccer program. Congratulations. The next team that we'd like to recognize this evening is back for a second consecutive year is our girls tennis team. I'd like to introduce to you our head coach, Carol Hackenreck, to tell us more about their championship season.
Nice job, Chandler.
Congratulations to all of you athletes and coaches for your accomplishments this season. And many thanks to Mr. Griner, Dr. Wheeler, Mr. Schultz, and the Upper Dublin School Board for their support. I would also like to thank my assistant coach, Karen Sirota, for her dedication and assistance this season. Working with Karen has made for a very fun and successful season. Thank you. If I had to entitle the girls' tennis season this year, it would be the Alpha and the Omega. The Omega, because this was the last year for our Super 7 seniors. Our three captains, Lauren Chavitz, Elle Jablon, and Emily Wan, as well as Sydney Tress, Gabby Soriano, Casey Reed, and Nancy DeCamera. These dedicated players have added much to the strength, character, and leadership of the team for the past 4 years. I'm so proud of their accomplishments. The Alpha. It was also the year of 4 very talented freshmen who became integral members of the varsity team. We have never had a year when 4 varsity players have accomplished this feat. These players competed and secured the first and second singles positions, and that was Ksenia Tasic, and she had an outstanding record as a freshman in first singles of 9-1. And Annabelle Laughlin, who was second singles. A first doubles player, Belinda Jin, and the pinch hitter singles position, Erin Abbott. Quite an impressive accomplishment, to say the least. And then there's the middle. Completing the lineup were our talented and formidable juniors and sophomores. Juniors Annie Steinbrink and Leanne Rayner, who played third singles and third doubles respectively. And our 3 sophomore players, Andy Yang, and Leah Manifesta. Since we lost a week of practice this year due to the later start date, it made for a very compact season and a very interesting one. Our first match of the season, our very first match, and most exciting match was against our most difficult league opponent, Chelsea. We were missing our #1 player, Ksenia, who was at a tournament, and knew that there was a chance the competition could come down to the strength of the doubles teams. It did. 5 of the doubles players had already fought hard last year to secure our league championship against Wissahickon. And our 3 new players to the doubles lineup added their power and focus to the experienced player talent to win this first important match, steering the way for a second consecutive team championship for Upper Dublin. Our doubles teams understood how an entire competition can be jeopardized if all don't work together for the same end, and continued their relentless push throughout the season. In fact, the doubles teams broke a record this year by dropping 3 matches the entire season. Second and fourth doubles teams were completely undefeated. The girls achieved a regular season record of 12 wins and 1 loss and competed in the first round of district playoffs. Unfortunately, 2 of our singles players were injured, and we ended our run a little early. The entire varsity squad of 11 girls, 3 singles players and 4 doubles teams, received all the distinction for their records. Ksenia, our first singles player, also won the silver medal at the SOL American Singles Tournament. And made it to the second round of district singles. But then she had to drop out due to an injury. Annie Steinberg and Lauren Chavitz won the bronze medals at the SOL American Conference Doubles Tournament and also competed in the district tournament. Sports give players an opportunity to understand who they really are. These successful young athletes know who they are and where they are going. Congratulations, girls. Now I'll call you up one by one. Ksenia Tosic. Annabelle Roth. Annabelle is oldest. Annie Steinberg. Amanda Yang. Amanda Jim. Lauren Chavitz. Amy Liu. Leanne Rayner. Leonardo Costa. Elle Jamar, Stephen Tress, Erin Hackett, Gabby Soriano, Jason Reed, Nancy Cameron, and Emily Wong.
Request team captains Lauren Chaffetz, Ella Juan, and Emily Vaughn to please return to the podium. On behalf of the Squirrel Wood League, I'd like to present to you once again the American Conference Championship Trophy. Congratulations. Please come up front. I'd like to present to you this plaque on behalf of the school board and athletic department for your championship season. Thank you for your dedication and commitment that you've given to our tennis program. Congratulations. The next team we're recognizing this evening is making a historical visit tonight. Winning their first conference championship in school history is the girls volleyball team.
Good evening. Start off, I want to thank the board and administration during the season, but all year round. None of our accomplishments would have been possible without this amazing opportunity that the school has given me, myself, and just to recap quickly on our outstanding season that the team has really earned. Our record was 17-5. Those 5 losses came to teams that made the district playoffs. We were able to make the second round of playoffs for the second year in a row, which is very difficult to do in our conference. And for the very first time, we were able to beat Upper Marion, who has won the conference for the past 17 years, I believe. So that was a tremendous feat. That was pretty awesome doing that. Being able to beat them the second time around allowed us to be tied for first in our conference, which allowed us to become and share the American Conference champion for the very first time in our school program history, which ultimately led to us being able to raise our banner, hopefully in the summer. So for that, an awesome season, fantastic season for a bunch of girls. So without further ado, Ms. Sarah Sharp, sophomore Sarah Sharp. And we have with us juniors, Allison Tadeo, Jeffrey Hackman, Morgan, Molly Senior, Joseph Bear, and Jackie McBennett. And our seniors and also co-captain, Scabby Johnson. John Perry. And Sarah.
If team captains Sarah Denton, Gabby Johnson, and Gianna Perry would please come back up front. On behalf of the sport team, I'd like to present to you for the first time the American Conference Championship. And Coach Drew, please come back up front. On behalf of the school board and athletic department, I'd like to present to you this plaque to commemorate your first championship season. Thank you for the commitment and dedication that you've given to our girls this season. Congratulations. Going from one historic season to the next, the final team we're recognizing this evening has had an unbelievable season in the playoff run that unfortunately just wrapped up this past weekend. The football team not only added another American Conference title, but brought home our first District 1 football title in school history. Tell us more about this epic season is head coach Brett Stover.
I gotta be honest with you, I wish I was still practicing, but I am happy to be here tonight. This is one of my favorite nights of the fall, especially after you win one. When you don't win it 1 year, you miss this assembly, you realize how important it is to be here and how much you really enjoy it. I do really enjoy being here tonight. I also want to congratulate all our other sports teams, our other athletes and coaches. You guys did a great job. I think there's 9. We got 6 out of 9 in the fall. I think we're getting it done here at Up and Up Athletic, man. One thing they don't get right is they always put football last. I mean, study it before you need it. But anyway, this season, as Eric alluded to, we did defend our Suburban One American Conference title for the second year outright, which is always our first goal in the football team to take care of that one. So we checked that box off. We put together the first ever undefeated, untied football season in Upper Elm history. Check that box off. 14 straight wins to start the season. Check that one off. Probably one of the ones I'm most proud of is the payback win over Pennsbury here. 9-0 on our turf this year. All right, 9-0 on our turf this year. That's awesome. We are undefeated on that turf, 15-0 in 2 seasons. So it's definitely home field advantage, which we thank everyone for that. Our first ever District 1 title win, and our first ever win over North Penn in a football game. So some quick stats, because I know people have things on their plate. I know my son's got to study. Offensively, we led all 4A schools in the eastern half of the state with a total of 616 total points scored for an average of 41 points per game. We did this while defensively, all right, allowing only 146 points or 9.7 points per game, all right, which is also outstanding. So we tore it up on both sides of the ball. Our special teams, we had everything together. Truly a dominating performance by an extraordinary group of young men, which I'm going to introduce you to, and coaching staff. I'd like to give them their applause. This is the part of the night that I worry, because I always end up missing somebody. So if I miss you again, I apologize again at a time. I hope I'm not going to do that. Johnny Barrett, come on up. Ryan Brady, James Wesley, David Bryant, Philip Hubbard, Anthony Sonera, Michael Powell, DJ Crane, Gary Fields, Captain Stacey Gardner, Nicholas Harry, Julian Gibble, Jed Hansen, Julian High, Isaiah Hendricks, Justin Horton, Naeem Huff, Albert John, James Anthony, Nathan Lasosa, Heath Lee, Samuel Lee, Steve Lee, Zaire Lee, Marco Leone, DJ Lumiere, Christian Turner, Dane O'Connor, Jason Peter, and Ryan O'Gara. Sam Foley, Jared Pollock, Chase Weston, Captain Jack Rayvon, Evan Scott, Mark Seaberger, Kevin Selby, Chris Shields, Matt Silverman, Chris Smith, Vince Netto, Mike Sowers, Nicholas Sowers, Todd Spurt, Captain Brian Stover, Ryan Scheinberg, Nicole Swagger. Michael Ward. George Reeves. Max Weinberg. Chris White. Henry Weinberg. Max Wine. Ryan Walker. Rocky Wright. I'd like to introduce my staff. Some are here, some cannot be with us. Dan Pring, Eric Taylor, Dan Hoogenbrook, Ed Wall, Eric Shada, Dave Sowers, Paul Winters. Get up here. Steve Roberts, Jane Hopkins, Chris Vaughn, and I think I speak for a lot of the coaches in the school. We are very, very blessed to have an athletic trainer such as Katie Bartosik. I'm not sure if Katie's there. As a parent and a coach, knowing that my sons are in Katie's capable hands, and that your sons and daughters are in Katie's capable hands, that she's not going to put them on the athletic field to jeopardize things further for them in life, is a comfort. And Katie, I thank you and applaud you.
Would Ryan Stover, Henry Weinbrake, Jack Rapine, and Stacy Gardner, the team's captains, please come back up front. On behalf of the Spur One League, I'd like to present to you once again the American Conference Championship Trophy, and on behalf of District 1, the District 1 Championship Trophy. Congratulations. Coach Stover, before the picture.
I think the answer to that is no.
And to finish things off this evening, I would like to present this plaque on behalf of the school board and our athletic department to Coach Stover for his commemorate his championship season. Thank you for all your hard work and commitment to our guys.
Any comments from colleagues on the board? Again, a very, very special thank you to the parents here tonight. You made the decision to send your young men and women to Upper Dublin. Thank you for making that decision. It was the right decision. And congratulations to everybody. We will take a 5-minute recess and we'll be back to our presentations. Again, congratulations to everybody. and Dr. Bill Gazula, Coordinator for Elementary Education and Federal Programs. Ms. Morrison.
Good evening, members of the board and community. Thank you for the opportunity to present our district's data this evening. And thank you, school board directors, for all of the support and the many ways you are out in our schools and encouraging and supporting our teachers and students on a regular basis. I want to begin this evening by reading to you the mission statement of Upper Dublin School District as follows. The mission of the School District of Upper Dublin is to provide a safe environment in which all students are respected, educated, encouraged, and challenged to become lifelong learners within a global society. This mission statement has been around for quite a while. I believe it was drafted in 2007, though I'm sure there are some people in this room who know exactly the date. So it's been a while since some really smart people from our district got together to think about what it would look like and envision a school district. And I just want to illuminate the part of this that says, challenge to become lifelong learners within a global society. I think it used to be as learners, when we thought about what school was about, we said it was about the 3 R's. But in today's global society, it's much more about the 4 C's. When we think about education today, we think about communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. We take for granted that students in the United States already have the 3 R's. So what is it that we do with the 3 R's is what's becoming increasingly important. And as always, when I begin a data presentation, I think it's important to ground ourselves in the really, really important essential work of our school district. So I'll start with a story, 2 stories to be precise. One of the Sandy Run Middle School 6th grade team, who every year read a book called Al Capone Does My Shirts, a story from Alcatraz, that is the prison. It's a Newbery Award-winning novel that is also historical fiction. It does an excellent job combining elements of, as the students say, back in the day, with a very human story of a brother and a family who are dealing with a sibling who is handicapped. And what do they do when they read this novel, the students and the teachers? They don't just read it. In fact, they go out of their way to make it a real-life experience. They visit the state penitentiary, and then in an interdisciplinary way, they relive what it was like to get together in the 1930s in America. And they do some swing dancing, they do some more swing dancing, and they listen to period music. And they really get into the role, dressing up fully. In fact, one of the 6th grade teachers, I just saw a video that someone sent me, she was full on with mustache and suit and having such a nice time with students that when they think of that kind of experience for students, it pales in comparison with even the very best of data. The second story I want to tell is our 6th to 12th grade students were dedicated themselves and teachers to an hour of code. An hour of code is an international movement to expose students to computer science. Over 180 million students so far have done an hour of code, and it exists in 40 different languages. The idea that as we move into a sense of digital literacy in the 21st century is something that I've been personally challenged with. There are many times now that I regret that I've not yet learned to code, because I have to lean on Mr. Vinogradov, our tech director, to encrypt certain things and to help me do distribution lists and all the things that really, if I have some spare time, I'm going to learn to do by myself, because I see as we move into the future, we won't always have a fill right there as a resource. We're going to have to do it ourselves, and that's certainly true for our students. So that was part of sponsoring an hour of code. And to bring it to our elementary schools, Mr. Vinogradov has been going to our 4th and 5th grade classrooms to talk about digital responsibility and digital literacy, and he suggested to the students, instead of playing video games on the slide when your teacher's not looking, why don't you code video games? And sure enough, he got a nice email from one of our 5th grade students who had already gone to code.org and learned how to do some coding. So he and I, along with some 8th grade teachers, were beginning the conversation around how could we put that kind of coding into our curriculum with the design thinking in mind that's all of our students will learn coding to prepare them for the future. So that kind of narrative kind of pales in comparison to what comes next, because that's where powerful learning exists in our school district. However, I'm going to switch tacks now and talk a little bit about Pennsylvania data and assessment and how it's undergone tremendous transformation over the last few years. It all began in 2012 when the Pennsylvania legislature passed teacher effectiveness system as part of Act 82. And I just want to point out that it is this famous circle that's parsed out into 4 pieces. That half of that data is still based on observation of good teaching and learning, but the other half is based on data, and that data is significant. One part of that pie that you can see up there, I believe I can point to that part right there, covers what's known as school performance profile data for individual school buildings. We'll be talking about that a little more. This middle piece is very, very important because it's the first time that the state has tried to capture growth, student growth. It's called PBOS, Pennsylvania Value Added System, and it is a statistical model that has been likened to a growth chart that doctors use as children are growing. It's normed to students in Pennsylvania, and it helps us see how much a student makes growth, both as an individual as well as a member of a class, as well as a member of a grade. So we'll be referring to PBOS a little more later on. The important thing to remember is while it is a piece of the pie, it should never be looked on at its own, but always in context to other data. And then finally, the bottom green is locally elected data that we measure, and so that gives a composite score for Pennsylvania teachers and educators. I'm going to turn this presentation over to my colleague, Dr. Kutsula, who's going to talk a little bit about our PSSA scores for this year.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Good evening to the board and the administration. Some of what I'm going to share has been shared before at our committee meetings, our education committee meetings. We are very much aware the board is interested in the percentage of students who were proficient and advanced and those who were basically below. You're interested in looking at growth data, so we've added some of that as well. And certainly you're interested in how we stack up against some of our peer districts and neighboring districts. And so some of that information will be in here as well. So I apologize for some of the redundancy, but it adds some foundation for how we want to structure moving forward. In terms of PBOS, as Ms. Morrison said, it's a growth measure, and back in June, our new Secretary of Education for Pennsylvania, Pedro Rivera, had sent out a letter to school districts and families just cautioning a little bit about the use of PBOS data coming off of last year's results. And the reasons are in this slide. One, the PA core standards that were adopted in 2013 were intended to be more rigorous, which they are. The PSSAs in ELA and math administered this past spring were comprised solely of those new, more challenging standards, and the tests were revised. More so than that, after the students took the assessment, the cut scores were determined. So we have new standards, new assessments, new cut scores to measure student progress. And if you recall this slide from our last Education Committee meeting, this was the range of scores across grades 3 through 8, where students took PSSA and English Language Arts. These cut scores were created by a group of 58 people from across the state of Pennsylvania. And the one note of reference in terms of what the proficient cut score is, at all 6 grades, 1,000 points constitute proficiency, although there is a different cut score across the grades for what constitute advanced. Not sure the logic behind that, but in essence, if you remember the Education Committee presentation, in this slide, these are the actual results across the state of Pennsylvania when the new cut scores were applied. Blue are the students who were advanced, green, proficient, yellow were basic, and red below basic. And if I could take that screen and turn it 90 degrees clockwise, you would recognize that that represents a bell curve. Right? And even though we now call it ESSA instead of No Child Left Behind, we still believe all means all. Right? In fact, that we've been preparing our kids, all of them, for success, to have cut scores that basically reenact a bell curve, I think is disgenuine terms of what the state has provided us with. So, how does it play out in Upper Dublin? The PSSA results in English language arts. All 4 of our elementary schools and Sandy Run Middle School average at least 80% proficient or advanced. Obviously well above the state average, and we're well aware at this point that it compares alongside most, if not all, peer districts. Each grade level band also, because we looked at this previously, so it's not just about each school, but we try and look at patterns across our student body as they progress from year to year. When you look at each grade level band, in ELA, they all average between 81 and 88% proficient and advanced as well. This is a horrible slide for this space. This will be easier to see when we have it up online. But one of the things that we're proud of in the data is in elementary schools in the area of advanced. Even though we've had a hardcore reading program for at least the last 8 years, 1/3 of our students scored in the advanced range. We have some outstanding students scoring very well, despite new standards, new tests, new cut scores. We need to continue to challenge and support all of the students across those ranges. And the other point that is really important as we head into a budget cycle, although hard to see from this distance, is the number of students who scored basic last year in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. Those students have advanced 1 year, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. They're all in our middle schools now, right? And so 33 5th graders, 31 6th graders, and 35 7th graders last year were basic. That is 99 students who entered Sandy Run Middle School at the basic level. We need to make sure that we have the supports and resources to help them meet their full potential. Overarchingly, as I mentioned, all of our grades, and that's what this slide shows on the left, all of the grades 3, 4, 5, respectively had 83% advanced proficient, 81%, and 88%. Strong scores. And as we head into the middle school, 6th grade had 87%, 7th grade had 87%, and 8th grade had 85%. We feel really good about those results, and yet we know there's room for continuous improvement because in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, what the boxes to the right show is that the ranges of scores, the lowest percentage at a grade per school, compared to the highest school, our range at the 3rd grade level was from 75% proficient advanced to 92%. It's too disparate. When you look at 4th grade, the same thing occurs, 75% to 89%. We want to make sure that all students, as they progress through the system, have a common experience, a guaranteed experience for success. And so we want to challenge all students to have what we call a guaranteed experience, but also a viable and personalized experience. That is a great deal of the philosophy underpinning the work of the ELA Steering Committee right now. So we are getting after this work and using this data to drive that discussion. So, easier to see in your packets. This is a slide that represents PBOS. And it's a difficult thing to understand, so I'll do my best. PBOS would typically look at students' scores from previous test-taking opportunities, and they would, based on those opportunities in math, reading, or science, create a growth projection. And they would compare how the student actually performed relative to that growth projection. But because of the changes over the past year, what the PBOS data basically shows is it thinks about where a student was last year when they took the assessment relative to their percentile ranking. So if you think about a student who might have been at the 88th percentile last year in ELA, if they remained at the 88th percentile this year, that means it's representative of 1 year's growth, right? Because they held their position, it would show up green. If they were above the 88th percentile, it would be blue, because they would have surpassed that. If they were below 88th percentile, they'd be green, or I'm sorry, they'd be red. So you take that into consideration, and they look at all students and say, where are they this year after the results, relative to their positional ranking in the previous year? Did they hold form? Did they go up? Did they go down? And so it's a pretty I'm going to suggest an unreliable data point to put too much credence on. But there's a lot in this slide which helps set us up for future discussion this evening. And so I'm going to do my best to talk through the circles. Each of those circles represents a grade level. So from the audience, the first circle, which is green, is grade 4, comparing student position from 3rd grade to 4th grade. And then across, it'll be the 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th, and 8th grade scores. These are set up by quintiles, whereas the PSSA raw scores, you look at their 4 areas: advanced, proficient, basic, or below basic. They put them in quartiles based on cut scores. These are based on quintiles. And basically that means they're looking at where the students fall across all of the state test takers and broken into bands of 20%. So at the very top of each circle, kind of at the 12 o'clock position, students who fall into category 1 would be in the lowest 20th percentile, right? And then position 2 is 21 to 40 percentile, position 3 is 41 to 60, and so on. So your students who are in areas 4 and 5, they're in the top 40 percentile of all test takers in the state. And I say that because when you look at these circles, one of the things that should jump out at you is we are well over 2/3 of our student test takers in each of these grades are in the top 40% of test takers. And a great number of them are actually in the top 20%. So we have a great number of kids in those 2 areas. And when you eyeball 4th grade, what that basically means is not every single kid, but in generalities, across all 5 quintiles in 4th grade, our kids held their relative position compared to where they had been in 3rd grade. That's basically what you can tease out of that circle. Now when you look to the second circle, 5th grade, start at positions 1, 2, and 3. What that suggests is that the kids who are in the lowest 40th percentile or even 60th percent held their position or grew. They improved from where they had been the year before, which is fairly a good indicator, because when you look next to it in 6th grade, you see something similar, right? The 2nd and 3rd quintiles. So that might suggest that the way we're intervening on kids who are kind of fence sitters, right? They're at risk. They're not, perhaps 2 years or 3 years below grade level. But our interventions potentially are working in 5th and 6th grade. What the red suggests, for the 2/3 of the kids who are sitting in the top 40 percentile, they're not growing as much as they should, right? And this is part of the data that we're looking at when we think about our ELA curriculum review. We want to make sure that we're putting material in the hands of kids that are developmentally appropriate, regardless of where they fall across that spread. We need to be able to challenge our most able readers and our most struggling readers and everybody in between. This would suggest in 5th and 6th grade that we need to continue to challenge kids who are our most able readers to continue to grow. When you look into 7th grade, you see that the circle becomes a bit more favorably colored. Students in the 4th quintile are blue, making great gains. And when we get to 8th grade, not atypical from what we have seen across 6th, 7th, 8th grade in our middle school. As kids continue to track through the system, they continue to make tremendous gains in ELA. And so you can see that our 8th grade data gets back to where we look like in 4th grade. So we kind of see this 4th grade, and then we see this dip that happens as kids transition out of elementary and into middle. And we need to continue to look not just at this kind of global data, but work with our teams to dig deeper into what's there. We have much more work to do. In mathematics, we'll shift the conversation. You'll notice a similar slide. 1,000 is the magic number again, as a cut score for proficient. We need more information about how that is, how points are accumulated to get to that. You'll see different cut scores for advanced, and they're different cut scores than ELA. So again, I get concerned that 58 people decided what the cut scores were, and you end up with a spread across the state that looks like this. Very few kids scoring advanced, few kids scoring proficient. And as you move from 3rd grade on the left to 8th grade on the right, you can see that across the state, the number of kids proficient in advanced continues to decline. For Upper Dublin, each of our elementary schools had scored between 71 and 74% proficient or advanced. Not scores we're used to seeing, but they were favorable when compared to some peer districts. Nearly 1/3, I'm going to show it on this slide, although it's hard to see from seats. When you look at the advanced column for test takers in grades 3, 4, and 5, nearly 1/3 of all of our test takers in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade were advanced. So that's really critical coming off of the first year of a new math curriculum at the elementary level. Right, one of those questions has to be, are we in this new program continuing to challenge our most able mathematicians? We're pretty pleased with the results, but 1/3 of our advanced kids are showing that growth. We also look at this data and we see that in the below basic area, we had 33 kids in 3rd grade, 30 kids in 4th grade, and 20 in 5th grade. The language that is embedded in the Eureka program is rigorous, right? So we know that we have to continue to put supports in place for students so that we can differentiate across those grade levels. That is part of the information that we use when we think about program adoption, like Zearn, right, which is a digital platform aligned specifically to Eureka. The intention there, coming off of last year, as teachers were going through day-to-day, week-to-week challenges with students, they were saying, how can we best intervene on behalf of students? We think Zearn gives teachers the potential to do that. So we'll compare our numbers as we come out of this year to see if some of those differentiation strategies indeed have been helpful. The other parts of this data, which we mentioned before, not numbers that we're ever comfortable with and never used to seeing. For our middle schools, across 6th grade, 53% proficiency, 7th grade, 69% proficiency, 8th grade, 55% proficient or advanced. We're pleased with 7th grade because those percentages are strong compared to our peer districts. And we look at 6th and 8th grade and had a heart attack initially when we looked at it. You make some phone calls, you try and figure out how some of our neighboring districts are doing. And across their grade levels, there were many similar results. And so we're trying to work with, not just internally, but externally, to figure out if that's a function of the test, a function of our new program adoption at the middle school, Carnegie, and to what extent that's a function of the new cut scores. It's hard to tease any one of them out. It's a combination of all three. The bottom line is we're going to continue to push hard to challenge all students in mathematics. And Ms. Morrison will talk a little bit more later about how teams are getting at that data. So again, with PBOS, remembering it's about where kids are positionally compared to the year before. We talked about our advanced students, right, and how the kids in the top 20%, top 40th percentile continue to do well. That's what this slide shows. 4th grade and 5th grade, our kids in the top 20th percentile held their position. That holds better for 5th grade than it does for 4th grade. So when you look at the kids in the lowest, I guess in quintile 2, 3, and 4, right, those kids did not hold their position. So we're concerned about that, and we want to dig into the individual data around those students. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Morrison to talk a little bit about what's going on at the middle school and the strategies that they're putting in place to attack that.
So as you can see, the circle for 6th grade, which is one smack in the middle, that is entirely red, on first blush does look alarming. However, it's important to consider all of the data, and when we look at data, we look at it through 4 lenses. We look at it through curriculum, we look at it through instruction, we look at it through assessment, and we look at it through organization. We did put a brand new curriculum into place in the 6th grade, and 6th, 7th, and 8th grade last year. And we were pleased in many ways with the new curriculum because it had the same rigorous standards and the same strong foundational approach. However, there was a big transition with students coming out of 5th grade and moving into this new way of doing mathematics that is much more based in real life problems and asks students to do a lot more foundational deep thinking, and accompanied by that is also a very rigorous rigorous test. The test, in fact, is so rigorous that across the state, only 39% of students were able to be proficient. So when we look at that, we think that in Upper Dublin we have over 52% of our students proficient. We're well pleased, and again, with there will be a couple of positive slides coming up in a moment. But when we look at that and we look at our 6th grade scores compared to the peer districts, we're doing a very good job. We also have to look at it in terms of organization. I alluded to that a little bit earlier. There is a big transition between 5th and 6th grade, and it is very typical nationally for that kind of middle school transition to show up in low scores in the first year of middle school, and I think we can see that. There's a lot of adjustment that happens between the small environment of an elementary school and then the beginning of the journey into adolescence as students transition to the 6th grade. And I have to give our 6th grade team a lot of credit. They manage that transition so very well in terms of supporting students socially and emotionally and academically. In all ways, they're looking out for their best interest. In terms of organization, there's also the lens to look at, which is instructional minutes. When students are in our elementary schools, they have 65 instructional minutes of mathematics every day. They transition to Sandy Run, and now they have 46 minutes. And if you're at all familiar with that building, there's a lot of moving back and forth through the breezeway. And so very often, if you are at the end of one building moving to the end of another building, those 46 minutes have just been cut even further. And so students don't have the same opportunity for mathematics as they've had in the elementary school. It's something we're currently holding under consideration to see how we can potentially get more mathematics instruction into our 6th grade program. And I believe we've looked at considered some other middle school models that show really across 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, middle schools have more minutes of math instruction than we do. So that's something that's important to consider. You can see in 7th grade, that transition to 7th grade is very smooth, though I have to wonder, and Dr. Pizzullo alluded to this data set. This growth data set is something that we don't totally understand yet, and we're working very hard to figure out how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. We have noticed, and neither one of us is a statistician, but we have noticed that generally when you have a year where there doesn't seem to be a lot of growth, the following year there is growth, wondering if there's a connection. Again, and then there's just one other thing that I'm going to mention around 6th and 8th grade data. Students who are accelerated in mathematics in 6th grade actually sit in a 7th grade course. But the state requires them to take the 6th grade PSSA. And so when they sit for that PSSA, they're exposed to content that maybe they haven't had for a long time, and the state actually doesn't deem necessary for 7th grade eligible content, so they're at a disadvantage. The same is true in 8th grade. Approximately half of our students take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and of those students, and I'll talk about that a little later, who take Algebra 1, 90-some%, 98% of them pass that test, that Keystone Algebra 1 test. But those students are also made to take the PSSA, and again, there's content on the PSSA in 8th grade that our Algebra 1 students aren't exposed to. In my personal opinion, I think that's flawed thinking by the state. If you're enrolled in a 7th grade course, I believe you should be given a 7th grade PSSA exam, but clearly we haven't gotten there. So I do think that also accounts for part of the low scores. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the emergence of PSSA at a certain level. We knew, for example, that PSSA test in 5th grade in reading language arts was fairly challenging, so we knew to expect some lower scores. I think we're going to see the pattern emerging again. Looks to me like, given the fact that in 6th grade only 39% of the state is proficient, and in 8th grade I believe it's 29% of the state. Those are two very, very important things. We have been working very hard to make sure that our content is very specifically aligned, that students are being given a lot of opportunity and support to work toward the new rigorous standards, and I expect the scores to go up continuously as our teachers are refining their instructional practices or method. Talk a little bit about science. We've traditionally had a science program over the last years that was perhaps very instructionally strong, but wasn't necessarily aligned to the standards. And as we realized the importance of the new standards, we began to design toward the standards, using teachers as our experts in instruction and pairing our teachers with both our K-12 science coordinator, Kim Small, who's currently in a science education doctoral program, as well as some external support through Arcadia University to think about how we can redesign our science program. And we are very happy so far with the results. We have put into place now units of design across all of our elementary schools with some common assessments, which give our students a guaranteed experience, which is something that we're always looking to continue to expand. In terms of our science achievement scores, 91% of our fourth graders scored proficient in advanced, 81% of our eighth graders. Very much in line with other districts, peer districts. And again, you can see those three circles that you see are the PBOS growth circles. They represent fourth grade as the first circle, then eighth grade, and then that final circle is the Keystone Biology course that I included as well. Our students' growth in science in fourth grade seems remarkably high and has been traditionally. But I guess my question mark around that is that growth standard is based on students' based on students' third grade reading and math score that then is somehow aligned to a statistical model to predict how they might do in science. And then again, if you take a look at the eighth grade science exam, that's based on students' fifth, sixth, and seventh grade math and English language arts exam with some statistical model to show how students might do in science. The state has a lot of confidence in that model. We are still not sure, but what I can tell you is that we've been working very, very diligently in teacher teams to make sure that our content and course design is aligned to the science standards as well as the next generation science standards. And I will leave the Keystone discussion to a little bit later on, but you can see that our growth there appears to be very positive. Though there's another pattern of some low growth scores followed by some high growth scores. So what's the good news? Well, the good news is if you take an average of our PSSA scores in grades 3 through 8 in mathematics, you can see that we are in fact the third highest scoring ranking district in Montgomery County, and indeed 18th in the state. So I just want to add the caveat that there is a charter school, Souderton Charter School, that is also part of the ranking above Upper Dublin, but I'm looking to surely at public school districts. So kudos to our 3rd to 8th grade mathematicians who give us this county score of 3rd, despite the difficult new standards, despite the rigor, and despite the kind of mathematics they're doing. That I think if we had to do that kind of mathematics as children, we would have really struggled. Same thing is true in reading English language arts. Again, we are 3rd in the county, and we're 15th in the state in terms of our overall SSA scores, and I think that's a lot to be proud of. I'm going to turn the presentation over for another little bit to Dr. Bruce Pezzullo, who's going to talk to us about the school performance profile.
Don't go far. You have seen this before, and we're going to move toward talking about SPP. The score is based on a 100-point scoring system. For members of the audience who aren't familiar with it, we'll go through it fairly quickly. First, we know it's based on academic achievement. Again, percentage of students who score proficient or advanced across the various assessments. Students, also we look at the percentage of students who are proficient advanced in 3rd grade reading. It's actually, I think, a testament to the state. For all of the areas that you could use to calculate SPP, the one factor that has the greatest weighting is the percentage of students who are proficient or advanced in 3rd grade reading. Really important hallmark. So we look to this to get 40 points out of our 100-point scale. I'm actually going to jump ahead 2 slides for a second here. We just talked a lot about growth. So again, in those major areas, tested areas, you look to see the percentage of kids who actually met their growth goal in each of the assessment areas. That totals another 40 points. So that makes up 80 points out of the 100 points. And I'll just slide back. 10 of the points, 5 go to closing the achievement gap, specifically related to our African American population and other areas. All students. That's all students. Sorry. So, that's right, because they changed. Okay. So, this is for all students. Historically underperforming students are the various subgroups that now go into one bucket, one category. So you can get 5 points for closing the achievement gap of all students, and then 5 additional points for trying to close the gap for historically underperforming. So that brings us up to 90 points. There are other academic indicators, including the 4-year cohort graduation rate, promotion rate, the attendance rate. The expectation of the state is 95% attendance rate or better, so thank you to parents and students for always surpassing that here in Upper Dublin. We also look at the scores of students on advanced placement tests, IB or college credit, and also PSAT participation. So you can gain 10 points there. And then finally, the reason why the top high school actually had over 100 is because you could also get extra credit for advanced achievement. So not only do you get points for the overall percentage of students proficient or advanced, but you get an extra bonus for the students who specifically scored advanced in those categories, as well as extra credit for students scoring 3 or higher on AP placement exams.
So you can see that in 2014, in terms of school performance profile, there are no scores for students in grades 3 through 8. The state decided not to produce school performance profile scores because there's a lot of benchmarking that goes into that scores. And with new PSSA cut scores, I believe that the Pennsylvania Department of Education realized that it would be impossible to have any kind of school performance profile score. However, our Keystone exams were not changed. They've been the same since 2011. And in 2011, we gave our first pilot set of biology Keystone exams, and we were shocked with the results. We consider ourselves to be a very good high school, a fantastic high school, in fact, in terms of many, many factors that we'll be discussing later on. And so we were, as always, looking forward to administering these pilot biology Keystones and thought we would do exceedingly well, and we didn't. We were shocked. And we began to uncover that one of the reasons we weren't doing well is because our curriculum wasn't aligned to the state curriculum, which makes a lot of sense. If you're not teaching the things that are being tested, then of course your students are not going to do as well. And so we thought we really need to get on board, and we started to back design towards the Keystone standards in the area of biology, algebra, and literature. And as we began to do that, our scores began to improve. And so when we received the results of our Keystone exams this year, we were actually rather excited until we received our school performance profile. Dr. Pizzula will click on that link and help us take a look at that, and I think you'll understand why we were disappointed with the results. So that's a school performance profile site. You can easily get there by typing school performance profile Pennsylvania into your cursor and then finding Upper Dublin. And you can see there are tabs across the top. You can see that there are tabs across the top that gives general school information. There's some district information that can be gained. The most important thing is the third tab on the left, which is our academic performance. Our academic performance is 84.9%. That dropped from 92% last year, and we were very disappointed until we remembered that that score reflects students currently sitting in 12th grade. That means that they could have taken the Keystones as early as 6th or 7th grade. grade Algebra 1 Keystones, that they took their biology keystone in 9th grade, which was 3 years ago, so that the score that's reflected there is when we were just at the beginning, just dipping our foot into redesigning to the standards and to the new rigor. And so I just will briefly go through it, though it's probably going to be very hard for you to see, but as Dr. Gurdzula described, it shows our achievement scores for algebra, biology, and literature. And it's kind of hard for you to see from here. We did not receive the score for our, we did not receive the score because we didn't have enough test takers from our vocational technical high school, although all of our students did very, very well. And if we had a few more test takers, then we could have gotten some points there. Obviously, Upper Dublin High School doesn't have a third grade, so there are no scores there. If you look down the next category, and it's a little bit hard for me to read, but I've looked at this site so many times, that shows closing of the achievement gap for all students. Dr. Gurdzula alluded to that. If during the benchmark year, you take the score and you subtract that score from 100, and then you have 6 years to bring that score back up to 100, and you can see that both in the area of mathematics and algebra, we get an upside down red triangle because we did not exceed that score. In the area of biology, we have made progress, and so we get a green square. For closing the achievement gap for historically underperforming students, and I think I need to explain that with the new federal waiver through school performance profile, the state is asking us to look at a lens of students that include students who hold an IEP, students who are economically disadvantaged, and students who are English language learners, which is markedly different from No Child Left Behind, where we were asked by the state to disaggregate data according to race and ethnicity. We do get some points back. We have an excellent AP participation rate. Our SAT benchmark, which is 500 points, average of 500 points in each of the SAT categories. We easily achieve that. We have a great graduation and attendance rate, and we do gain some points back. What I would say overall is that this captures a picture of our high school as students were taking tests 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I'm not sure if it's an accurate picture of our high school today. And so we dove into the results of our current Keystone exams, and I'd like to share those because I think that you'll be able to see and appreciate the progress within it. So this next slide, what you see is a Keystone end of course result, which means that in 2013, 14, and 15, we had 9th grade students sitting in Algebra 1 who took the test at the end of the course. We had students in 8th grade, Sandy Run Algebra, who took the test at the end of 8th grade. Same thing for biology. We've been administering the biology test at the end of 9th grade. And English literature, which students take at the end of 10th grade. The only exception on this chart is in 2013. We administered the algebra test to all students. We needed to under the federal waiver requiring that students take the test in the area of mathematics. And so you can see that that 69.3% reflects students sitting in 9th grade but taking potentially Algebra 1 geometry or even a higher level course. So when you start thinking about our journey of designing to the new rigorous standards, you can also see our market improvement. So in 2014, algebra students at our high school scored 53.4%. That's just 9th grade students taking the end of course exam. And in 2015, we had a market improvement from 53 to 67. Those upside down red triangles, as our cohorts catch up, will turn to a different color, and we will get points back, and our school performance profile as a result will go up. Sandy Run Middle School students who are enrolled in Algebra 1 do a fabulous job. Very few students who don't pass that rigorous test, and you can see that's reflected there. But you see how the school performance profile is actually an average of the two. In the area of biology, I alluded to our 2011 field test. That data is not recorded in our performance tracker, but you can see the incredible progress that was made in biology from 74 to 90 to 79.8 and then to 87.1. That 2015, and of course in biology, at 87.1, 50% of our students were advanced. We're very, very proud of that. Again, in English literature, took the test 2 years in a row, have been redesigning to the new rigorous standards, 84 and 81%. And then you can really see that payoff as we jump to 90% in 2015. So what does that look like when we start to parse it out? Well, in terms of, in the area of algebra, when we look at all student growth, so how did all students do? The circle to the right is the previous year, so that's 2014. The circle to the left is 2015. You can see our growth scores are really, really positive, that we have a lot of students scoring, and that we really improved. So in 2014, you can see that our lowest students were in red, not making progress, but you use the filter of historically underperforming students, again, students with IEPs, students who are economically disadvantaged, students who are English language learners. In 2013, 0.6% of those students passed the Algebra 1 exam. 2014 was 34, 2015, 46.2%. If students are not proficient on the algebra test, then they may retake the test, and if they're not proficient, then eventually they will do a project-based assessment. The state just passed a delay in requiring Keystones for graduation to the class of 2019. Part of the sticking point is that the grading of the project-based assessments is very unwieldy, and I don't believe that the state has a solution exactly for how that's going to happen. And so they're giving some more transition time. And as we get that transition time, we're hoping that as we continue to look at our curriculum and instruction, those percentages will continue to go up. Again, you can see the growth for historically underachieving students in terms of algebra also continues to get better. So you can see as the previous year, which is to the right, 2015, more students are growing. Though you can also see that in the top 20%, we need to take a look at that and make sure that we maintain those rigorous standards and supports. Our Keystone Biology growth for all students has been beautiful 2 years in a row. You really see the biology department was the first department that back designed to standards. And they've been instructionally and curricularly very sound. Again, here are our achievement scores for historically underperforming students. 2013, 35.9% of students were proficient and advanced. Look at 2015, 69.2%. Incredible growth, and we hope to continue to support students through that. This year we added a 9th grade course in reading. That reading course is designed for students who struggle in reading. They receive 2 days a week of additional biology support that also helps them attack reading strategies around biology as they're reading textbooks and articles and working on lab reports. And we're hoping to continue to see that biology percentage go up. And there you can see, again, very, very nice growth scores both years for historically underperforming students in terms of biology. In terms of literature as well, you can see all students, we were really struggling with those advanced students. And I know that our English teachers are still thinking about ways to challenge our advanced students to grow even more, but you can see that red circle from last year turned into a green circle. So we are making progress in this area. And again, our historically underachieving students started at 58.2% by 2015, 78.7%. I think we're getting the hang of throughout the year, but also personalizing that experience to make sure that students have multiple access to the curriculum, and that curriculum is engaging and interesting to students gain skills that they need. And again, Keystone Literature are historically underperforming students. There's some concern in terms of growth last year. This year, the growth scores are very, very nice. I'm going to transition out and talk about SAT, AP, and other UDHS achievement scores. This year's SAT scores were very, very positive. You can see there that the red line is our Upper Dublin scores, all above 550. You can see the national scores are in blue. Specifically over the last 4 years, we continue to do well with our SAT scores, with the stability of scores in all of our areas. And this evening you heard and saw our 2016 National Merit Scholars, which we had many. Last year as well, we had 11 finalists. As Mrs. Ward alluded to, a finalist, I believe, is 0.5% of all graduating seniors in the state of Pennsylvania. We had 11. Our 2015 SAT and National Merit Scholars were outstanding. We offer a high number of advanced placement scores. Advanced placement courses. Take a minute to peruse all of our offerings, which range from AP Lit compositions all the way to AP Statistics, AP Music, which really a wide variety. We have a lot of success in our AP scores, and I want to just start by saying the biggest success is the number of tests. I believe between last year and this year, we had 100 more exams given than we did last year that are 89.4% of all students scored a 3 or higher. We have 18 national AP scholars. To be a national AP scholar, you must earn at least a 4 and you must take 8 exams. So that is rather remarkable. And now I just want to talk a little bit as we come to the close of this presentation about Newsweek state rankings and some other state rankings. We talked about school performance profile. It still is a little bit of a puzzle that we're teasing out. And it didn't show Upper Dublin High School in a particularly great light. However, if you take a look at the Newsweek state rankings, Upper Dublin is 10th in the state. There's another site called niche.com that's becoming increasingly popular. You know, when folks move to a new area of the country, they go to niche to find out what kind of school rankings there are. Niche.com rated Upper Dublin High School among the top 100 schools in the nation. In terms of college and career, 85% of our students go on to a 4-year college, close to 15% to a 2-year college or vocational training. And it's probably very hard to read that list, but I challenge you to find a school that is a fit for your student at Upper Dublin. And again, with fabulous ranges from Ivy League colleges to small liberal arts colleges to big state universities and everything in between. So I want to leave you with Upper Dublin pride that goes into educating a student, kindergarten through 12th grade, is expressed in data, and data is important, but we all know data can be viewed in many, many different ways, and it can tell different stories according to how you slice it up. But at the end of the day, it's the kind of experiences that our students have here, whether it's in sports, whether it's in the arts, whether it's with opportunity to travel abroad, interactions with friends, with community members. At the end of the day, I think we should all feel very proud of the students that graduate from Upper Dublin High School. Questions and comments?
We have questions from the board. Ms. Ruffin?
Is that working? Okay. There was a question I had about math, because I know we changed, obviously, last year was our first year of Eureka and Carnegie. But I don't think all of the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders were in Carnegie. Is that right?
That's right. We did a soft roll-in, so we had our regular level switched to Carnegie in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and our advanced students switched this year.
Okay, so if anyone was advanced at one level or two levels, they stayed on the same programs as previous.
That's correct.
And then, so I guess for Algebra 1, last year, was that Carnegie for 9th grade at all?
So for our 9th grade students in Algebra 1, it was a fully planned Carnegie course.
Okay, but it wasn't, as you said, Algebra 1 was not Carnegie at Sandy Lane last year.
It was not.
Other questions?
I really appreciate the effort to dig into the data. I mean, I have to say that after reading things about PBOS and talking about it, I still don't 100% understand exactly what it means. I mean, even things like how you estimate science from other subjects doesn't totally make sense to me. But I do have one question, which is in terms of the PBOS data, do you know what the amount of variability is before it turns red? You know, between green and red, is it a standard deviation in the score? Is it something else?
Dr. Ludwig, we don't know the answer to that. We will find out. I would just like to comment that Dr. Ludwig has a rather extensive background in statistics, so thank you for the challenging question. And the affirmation that PBOS is difficult to really understand, although we still believe it points to something, and we believe that schools who do really well on a school performance profile, schools that are in the 90s and 100s are doing something really right, and we're inquiring of them what they're doing. Some of the answers we already have, and we certainly want to be that school.
Well, I do really appreciate the fact that you're using the data to figure out what it is we do well and what we can do better. Yeah, so thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I do have another question.
Ms. Roth?
What's the benchmark here that's being used for, is it 2013?
It's a variable enrolled in mathematics first, then biology, and now literature.
Okay.
Mr. Searle?
I have two questions. One is about the pie charts. You didn't explain, there's boxes above with 253-year average. I assume that's not a cohort average, that's fourth grade this year, last year, the year before, right?
That's correct.
And so I think the interesting thing, and you alluded to this, but there's really big year-by-year changes that, in most cases, the three-year average is similar to this year's. So, it's not like something new is happening here, it's something that's a new about the thing. And you suggested that some cases where that is, but I think I'm hearing more about that. My other question is on your graduation, on the list of colleges, it says 80% going to four-year institutions, 15% community trade school, so 5% going, not going to college. Is that correct?
That is what Mrs. Ward reported through guidance, although I think that one of the things that we're working on is getting a very detailed report of not only where students go in terms of post-secondary education, but also how successful they are. So it may be that students are taking a gap year. So there's other data involved as well. And the minute I said 85%, I actually knew that I should have said 80%, so thank you for catching me correcting it.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in hearing more about that. 5%.
It could be the military also. I'm not sure we're looking at.
And where do you put people who go to other post-secondary technical schools? Are they considered two-year colleges or something else?
I think they are, but I can't say with 100% certainty.
Any other questions from the board?
I'll do my best, to answer Mr. Stroh's question about three-year averages. So for the audience, there is a row of colors right above the circles. And so the For each grade level, the box on the left represents the year 2015, right? And overall, how we did as a district at that grade level. The box just to the right of that is the 3-year average, as Mr. Sirota was talking about. This is not following a cohort of kids, so it's not how they did year to year, but it's how that grade level performed for our school district over a 3-year span. So part of the, and so I just went back and you asked to take a look at this, Mr. Sirota. So 4th grade is showing up as blue for a 3-year average, and then we see 5th grade drop to red. So Ms. Morrison's comment was sometimes you see that drop and then it rebounds. What's interesting is the rebound doesn't happen in 6th grade, right? The 3-year average stays red. And then it starts to make that climb back up in 7th grade and 8th grade. So then when I was looking at the math scores, the 3-year trend is interesting, right? So it's green in 4th grade, blue in 5th grade, then it does take that 3-year dip in 6th grade. 3-year average comes back as blue in 7th grade and it dips again in 8th grade. So it's not just year to year, but even in the 3-year trend data, you tend to see this ebb and flow.
So Mrs. Morrison suggested a possible explanation for the red in math in 6 and 8. But we didn't hear anything about the changes that we see going across for PLA.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Can you jump back to the ELA slide?
Can you speak up?
Sorry, if you jump back to the ELA slide, I'm trying to find it myself here.
There it is on.
So, you know, as you said, the 3-year average in 5 and 6 are both red. And the explanation of a transition doesn't seem to apply between 4 and 5. So what's, you know, what might be driving it?
So it's a belief that I have, and I don't know that it's the true indicator as to why this happens. The part about a guaranteed experience and a personalized experience, I think what we're seeing in those results is a concern we have about the hardcore reading program, first of all, whether or not it's rigorous enough in terms of what it's challenging our children to do, to know, to be able to do. The fact of the matter is teachers have been working really hard to try and supplement it, so it has lost a little bit of its fidelity in terms of its implementation. And I would suggest, and I don't say this proudly, but I think I've said it to this board before, I'm one of those students who didn't like the reading material that was provided to me as I went through school. And I actually found myself, even though we're not supposed to group kids and know where they are, I continued to drop in my reading group as I went through school, particularly because I didn't feel that I was being challenged at an appropriate level. Now I have a doctorate, so I think I didn't have some revolution. I think I was a reader, right? But I think I was a child who wasn't being challenged at my appropriate level when I went through school. And I think what you see there, and we have to look deeper, and I would say by gender, partly, but I think it probably applies for all students. If we're not putting developmentally appropriate, challenging material in front of our most able readers, right? Personalized, engaging, rich, I think that is leading to our decline in scores for those children. So that's a big part of what we're looking at. Not only how we make sure that whatever we end up in moving forward, resources, program materials, that we have a wealth of material to put in front of all kids from all ability levels. I suspect that we don't have enough rigor and challenge and interest in what we're giving our most able readers.
Other questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll now move to the third presentation. This is the first look preliminary general fund budget. Ms. Brett.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. One of the things I want to point out that unlike the previous presentation that just concluded, which is, I don't want to say once and
Into the
done.
microphone, please.
that. Anyway, let me try this. Okay. As I was saying, my presentation tonight, or the beginning of the budget for 2016-17 will be ongoing for several months. This is the first of many discussions that we're going to have regarding the budget. So I will try to move through it fairly quickly tonight. And by the way, as means of a housekeeping comment for later on in the action portion of the committee or tonight, in the agenda, it does indicate that the food service report is for November of 2015. It is really for October of 2015. So if you would make the necessary adjustments for the minutes and everything, I would appreciate that. Key point, the reason why we're talking about the budget in first look in December is the Act 1 timeline is accelerated for the preliminary budget because the presidential election. This has a profound impact on estimating revenues and expenditures because basically we were taking expenditures only for about 6 weeks of the school year on many lines and trying to project those forward for the balance of the year. Also, the Commonwealth budget impasse is a significant unknown at this point in time. We have seen projections that our basic ed funding might increase as much as $225,000. But what we needed to do to be conservative was basically to estimate everything as it is for the current year. Timeline, I'm just going to zoom through this. Essentially tonight the board will authorize publication of the 2016-17 preliminary budget and authorize the advertisement of an intent to adopt on January 11th, 2016, and no later than December 22nd, we have to have the budget available for public display in the PPE approved format. And there's many other steps that we would have to go through regarding the budget timeline, and I will just move through. Oh, this is important. December 31st, applications for homestead exclusion will be sent from the county to homeowners who have not had the exclusion in the past. And the reason why I wanted to make a comment about that publicly tonight is we've had a number of turnovers, that is, homes that sold in the last year, as many as 60 in a couple of months. And so those residents, new residents in the school district and the township need to be certain that they fill out that application for homestead exclusion. You should receive one automatically, but if not, please follow up. Again, January 11th, the board adopts the 2016-17 preliminary budget, and we're off and running with many other reviews and submissions to the state. And finally, in May, there will be the second formal budget vote by the board, proposed final budget on May 9th, and then June 13th is the proposed or the timing of the adoption of the 2016-17 budget. So again, 6 months of this. Let's talk about what we rolled into the budget, what we started with the assumptions. 3.29% real estate tax increase. That's related to the base Act 1 index as well as an exception being filed for PSERS. We have settled the HUB assessment appeal, which we've been talking about for a number of years, but until such time as we make the repayment of the HUB refund, there has to be a credit in the revenue side of the budget or the revenue budget of $207,387. Earned income tax, when I say unchanged, and actually every year I get up here, the rate will remain unchanged. It will be 0.5% for the school district, but we're not expecting a major trend or increase. We've had a little bit better results over the last couple of years than what we had necessarily budgeted, but it's because Berkheimer, our real estate, or excuse me, our EIT collector, has done a great job of doing collecting back taxes. So not a big increase or assumption that we're going to collect more dollars, again, not changing percentage for earned income tax. Real estate transfer tax, when we start examining and getting into the detail of our revenues, which will be next month, you'll notice that you'll see a slight downturn. And based on what I just said, with all the properties changing value, that might surprise you. But we've had, in the last couple of years, an unusual experience in the Fort Washington Office Park, in that we've had REITs, real estate investment trusts, that have sold properties, generating rather substantial, like $250,000 of one-time revenue. And it would be prudent to think that that was going to happen on an annual basis. I've already touched on the fact that basic ed funding, no increase to special ed funding. I want to pause briefly with PlanCon reimbursement. We're going, assuming that stays the same, it's approximately $300,000, but there has been some discussion in Harrisburg about changing that in several different ways, so I won't bother to go through all the iterations. We also are assuming that PSERS and FICA will continue to be reimbursed by the Commonwealth, 50% of what we spend in expenditures. And also that the accountability block grant will continue to exist. That's about $100,000. So the local revenue, again, based on the assumptions I just went through, $76,869,074. State revenue, $16,114,000. And federal revenue, $361,000, for a total preliminary revenue budget of $93,344,557, which I can assure you will change several times between now and June 13. Here we have the famous pie chart. You will note that, as always, that the local revenue constitutes the largest piece of pie in Upper Dublin and a number of school districts with aid ratios of 0.15. While you may find it a little bit surprising with the state revenue, because I did indicate that we're assuming that all revenue would be the same. We're assuming that the assumptions in how the revenue is generated remain the same. Since PSERS will increase to over almost $13 million next year expenditure, that is the reason for the growth in state revenue, is the amount that's being reimbursed by the Commonwealth. And there is a very tiny sliver of the pie for federal. Out of this 82, I think it's 82.35%, $68 million of that is the local real estate revenue. So this is comparing budget for 2015-16 to 2016-17. And you'll notice a change of $2 million in local revenue. Again, most of that is the real estate tax that we discussed earlier, I discussed earlier. And the state, the only increase is the PSERS at 1.175. What's being driven by the increase in the PSERS that we will get, I'll discuss more about the public school employees retirement system. 7.87% federal revenue, although it's a 9% increase, it's $30,000, and that's strictly due to access, which is a small amount of revenue for the school district. Overall increase, $3.3 million, or 3.72%. Components of the tax increase, the preliminary tax rate increase, Act 1, the index is 2.4 for 16-17. The PSERS exception is 0.89 at this point in time, and 3.29. I will pause here because PSERS did something unusual. I don't know that they've ever done it. The rate was announced and was certified. Typically, it's on the second Friday in December. It was certified last Tuesday, I think like a day. And instead of being what had been projected and discussed and we used for our assumptions, being 29.69, if I remember correctly, and I will find it, they actually increased the rate, and it's at 30.03%. So on Thursday, we needed to go back and recalculate it. Actually, Ms. Baldessano went back and recalculated everything. And that changed our revenues and expenditures, and theoretically, it could even be passed on into the PSERS exception. So now let's focus on the other side of the budget, the expenditures. the other $95 million. At this point, we're not factoring in any retirements for any of our staff. No one has sent a letter yet to Mr. Sigafus. It is early, it's only December, but those will certainly be included as we move forward during the budget process. Contracted salary increases for all the staff. We settled 2 contracts last year. That was been added as much as possible. We're going to pause on the next one and talk about that. Additional 4 teaching positions. It is early in the budget process, and by process this year, we've changed things in Upper Dublin. We have had not less than 16 different meetings to discuss what we need to help move the district forward and how we can best serve the needs of our students. And 2 of those teachers we are planning to use for restructuring at the high school, and the additional 2 teachers, one is an elementary special education, and I believe one is a speech teacher at this point in time. Again, PSER's rate increase, 25.84. Now that's the current year's rate, and it did go to 30.03, but that was not the initial assumption. Medical insurance rate increases. Last year, I'm sure everyone remembers that we had a very unusual year, and that our medical insurance rate decreased by 15.7%. This year, the first look reveals 17.3% increase, totally offsetting all of the reduction that we had for the current year that we are living in. And our prescription rate is only 2.4% this year, and that's after following a 19% increase for last year. Other expenditures. Primarily, this is what I'm calling a carry-forward budget. It's basically the programs, the services that we have in place at this point in time, with the exception of the 4 teachers and much of the discussion that we've had regarding restructuring. And also the presentation extensive that was just given discussing English language arts curriculum review, ELA. We have a lot of money in the budget to make those changes. Dr. Marzullo, made comments about Harcourt and some of the concerns. So we have a large amount at this point in time earmarked for ELA review. I anticipate that that amount will decrease. I certainly hope that it does. Supply and utility costs are stable, and tonight there will be board action later to lock in electrical costs for 3 years due to the very low rates. And if we are successful based on what, if the board approves that tonight, and I will find out what the amount is or convey that information to Direct Energy tomorrow morning, we will lock in. We should have some savings in that particular line item, approximately $60,000 based on last week's numbers. Building budgets remained unchanged, and that may change after more meetings moving forward during the budget process. Debt savings, this is key. We did a bond refunding in 2015. We've had a number of meetings, a lot of time and energy has been spent on refunding those bonds, but it resulted in a savings of $556,000, and that's already been included. Our expenditures have been decreased by that amount. We are carrying forward a budgetary reserve of $250,000 for 2016-17. It includes a HUB payment. Now remember, I talked about HUB on the other side in the revenues, but this is on the expenditure side where we will actually write a check for $550,000. So in other words, HUB is still costing us $750,000 a year. And lastly, a capital reserve transfer is still budgeted of $1.4 million, and that's related to the reduction in debt service. That capital reserve transfer, or perhaps a transfer to debt service, is earmarked and with the thought of some major renovations or changes, at least for Sandy Run Middle School down the line. Technology. We're doing a lot of things differently in Upper Dublin. Technology, next year we'll have a second year of Chromebooks, release. That's 300 $22,000, I believe.
$364.
Thank you. And we're also looking at adding some other additional Chromebooks or notebooks to the classrooms. We took a pause, a significant pause this year on equipment refresh for technology, but we can't do that forever or we will run into some significant problems. So next year, we're looking at data projectors, classroom stations, and wireless expansion. The next two slides are simply the budget put into the function format that's required by Pennsylvania Department of Education. And you'll notice the regular education function 100 is over $41 million, special education $12 million, and we run down through just again the listing with total expenditures of $97,510. We'll take a quick look at our pie chart by function. It's fairly artificial for most people in the audience, with 1,100 again being the $41 million, obviously comprising the largest percentage of the pie. Debt service is second, with about 12%, and then special ed at 13%. Actually, I guess, although I have it listed second on my notes, it's 13 and 12 for special education, and then debt. This representation is one I think that everyone can understand a bit more. Salaries, benefits, 27%. So we're still over approximately 72% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits for all employees. And then we have debt and other objects, again, around 13 or 14%. We'll spend a bit of time here. This is the comparison, again, of the functions that are required under PDE, and talk about the increase of comparison of 2015-16 to 2016-17. You'll notice for regular education, a $2.8 million increase, 7.2%. That is approximately, remember I indicated there were 2 new teachers so going into regular education. They're part of the increase. All of the salary increases according to contracts for both teachers and support staff, they're included. We also have PESers, the retirement rate that I spoke of earlier, that's included, as well as our medical and increase in FICA. Whenever we pay higher salaries, FICA, Social Security also increases. All of the comments I just made regarding salaries and PESers, FICA, and medical run throughout the entire budget. It's just at 1,100 because it's such a large function. It drives a very large increase, both, particularly in dollars, $2.8 million, as well as the percentage of change. Special education, there's 2 additional teachers in there, and as well as the other expenditures. And this Thursday, actually, Mrs. Clegg will be coming to our finance committee meeting to talk about special education as well as other areas underneath within the Director of Pupil Services. So we'll be taking a more finite look at that on Thursday evening. You'll note that other education, the 1,400, actually decreased. And again, a budget is a living document. We had an individual educational assistant that resigned, and I did not think we were going to replace that individual, and so we reduced the budget, and I found out that my information, or I was incorrect, so we'll be making a change here. So that 33%, the $62,000 decrease, you'll see a change on that function line as we move forward. And for the sake of time, I don't know that I want to step through every single one of these lines. Let's go down to 2,200 and instructional staff services. Remember earlier I spoke about the curriculum changes and the curriculum review and ELA. It's within the 2200 function, within that $764,452. That's where the large amount is being earmarked for the time being for English language arts. I also wanted to point out another large percentage change is in 1300. Percentage-wise, it's not such a large amount, dollar-wise $70,000, but that is payments to Eastern, and we had an increase in the number of students, a small increase, but at the same time, the average, the formula that drives cost for any school district changed a little bit, that is, it dropped. So we had a couple of items contributing to an increase at Eastern. And here are simply the balance of the functions, operations. You can see not too much of an increase after you consider Feaster's salary increases being within that function line. Transportation, again, 2.8%. Support services, it's up 13%. We added a new part-time person in human resources. That individual is at 2,800. We had a change position from confidential secretary to Act 93, and that influenced that increase as well. There's something I wanted to say about community services, and it has slipped my mind and it's not written down. So I'll jump to debt service. Again, I spoke of that earlier. We did a bond refunding for 2015, and overall, that line item decreased by $4.5 million. So, budget increase at this point in time is $4.8 million. But I want to stress that in Pennsylvania, the preliminary budget, when it is approved, is the maximum amount that it can, the expenditure budget can ever be. So we do expect to make reductions from that $95,779,510. Challenges and unknowns. Well, the first one that tops my list is the state budget impasse for 15-16. We're at day 166 without a budget. And one of the, we just looked at the state information. There is a line access where you can see the amount of money as it accumulates that the state should be sending you. I believe that's down to $3.18 million that we are waiting for, and that number increases not frequently, but several times a month. So when the budget is passed, and as quickly as they can process payments for all the school districts, and not only just school districts, but municipalities and everything else, we have $3.18 million that should come to us. Just as importantly, second and third look at self-funded medical insurance, those typically do not go up. We're expecting those to come down, and we should achieve some savings there. The villa, and as we're calling it because of development, the Madison Estate, we're starting to refer to that property. The villa, you may recall, we did not include it in the budget for the current year for 2015-16 because we thought that they were, the villa, that residential facility located within Philadelphia, was going to relocate to Philadelphia before the beginning of the year. That didn't happen, and as a matter of fact, as part of the Finance Committee agenda later this evening, the contract for the 2015-16 year will finally be approved. Within the contract, you would note that we expect that they are going to relocate and not be in Upper Dudley for the 2016-17 school year. But we can be cognizant and keep that in mind as far as a potential budget change. Ongoing assessment appeals. Although we have settled hub, we still have a number of other appeals that are ongoing, and we are negotiating and working on them. But some of those are positive. You may recall last month we had 3 parcels that we actually increased the assessments and will be generating some additional revenue. Unfortunately, they all are not that positive. second bond refunding. The board passed a parameters resolution, and so we will have another bond refunding early in 2016. The key, or what I'm wondering about, is the Fed's move. How much will that cut into our savings? Or will it? But I suspect that it will. Anyway, we'll be moving forward with that, and with that in mind, probably to sell sometime within January and settle in February, which will give us ample opportunity to bake that into the next iteration of the budget. And Dr. Wheeler spoke earlier about federal and state legislative mandates and implementation. As some, I need to get used to saying that, rather than a child left behind. Every student's success, and we'll watch and learn about that as time passes. PSERS, talked about that a lot, but you will notice, look at the 12.36%, 16.93, 25.8 for the current year, 30.03%, very salary dollars spent, and then we're looking at 30.62%. The net, what we mean by net is it's 50% of the expenditures, and 50% is given to us as revenue, as reimbursement. And you will note that at the top is, I believe, $6.8 million for 2017-18, which is 1 year away. But looking at the year that we're talking about, budget is $6.4 million. A big jump from the 5.3 million of the current year. Wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about the base Act 1 index. You may recall I referred to 2.4 earlier, and you will note that over the past few years, 12-13, it was 1.7, 2.1, dropped a little bit to 1.9, and this year is at 2.4. What's estimated for future years, that would be 17-18 and 18-19, is actually 2.2 for the base index. However, those estimates are getting close to a year old, and we'll be updating those as the information becomes available. The blue line shows what our tax increases in Upper Dublin have been during the same period of time. The 4.25, I just want to refresh everyone's memory, was the last bit, I believe, of debt that was being worked in for the construction of the new high school. Since then, we've had a special ed exemption, I believe, a couple of years, certainly not this year, but the PSERS cost have been key in our tax increases. Total revenue, as we've discussed early on, $93,344,557, and total expenditures of $95,779,510. Yields a difference. Structural deficit of $2,434,953 as of today. But I want to point out and be very clear within the total expenditures, we have to include our transfers. So there is $1.4 million transfer included in that, and also $250,000 of budgetary reserve. So if you were to subtract both of those out of that amount, the $2.4 million, that's a significant reduction in the structural deficit as of December 14th. Estimated fund balance. We have projected fund balance, but actually we should have unaudited. As of June 30th, which just passed, $6,347,000. Total revenue for the current year, we're now talking about the current year, 15-16, $89 million of revenue. Total expenditures, $91 million. Committed fund balance, there's two pieces of our fund balance that are earmarked. One for being rate stabilization for medical insurance, RX, as well as about $900,000 earmarked for assessment appeals. Ending fund balance is estimated at this point for June 30th, 2016, and this number will change, I can guarantee you that, $3,424,484, which of course is the beginning number. When we we start looking for the 2016-17 year and simply adding in the revenues as per the budget at this point in time, and expenditures would leave fund balance at June 30th, 2017, ending uncommitted fund balance of $989,531. But I would also point out that there are two amounts that are committed by the board, $600,000 and $900,000, or $929,000, that could be added to that total fund balance. I know I have really rushed through this, but in realizing the time that it is, and we haven't started on our board meeting, I hope you'll forgive me for that, and questions.
Questions from the board? Ms. Wilson?
Can you remind me how much do we have left on our hub commitment for the credits and the repayments?
The 2015-16, 16-17 is year 2. We have only made 1 year's worth of payments, so that was year 2, and then we have 2 more years after that. So it's still on the 3-year plan, and that won't be changing.
And the credits and the payment are all at the same levels, on year 3 and year 4, the same amounts?
The expenditures would be the same amount. That was $550,000. But due to the rate changes on the millage rate, those numbers the credits will increase by the amount of increase in the millage rate. So therefore, the amount of final year will be less than what it is, but not appreciably. And in addition to that, there's interest that we need to pay on that, approximately $13,000.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Good?
I know you were talking about the 15-16 ending fund balance and how that will change a lot. Is there any particular area that's really possible negative for that, or is it just across the board? In other words, is it assessments?
Yes, assessments would be one example of several. We had some changes in property. In fact, it's being developed now and moved out of what is referred to as Act 319 property. We talked a little bit about this at a finance committee, and we're going to receive money 6 years back, an increase in the assessment there. And this will be a substantial amount of money. I just don't know if we'll end up receiving it this year or if it will flow into next year. But as soon as we know that, we will appropriately indicate and budget for that. The villa, the Madison Estate, that's an unknown. And candidly, I want to go back to one of my first comments, because it's so early in the year. There's going to be FMLAs, there's going to be a lot of things, medical situations that will impact our budget, as well as the number of substitutes that are needed. Estimates, further out you are, the softer they are.
Right, so it's just a moving target, we just have to keep chasing it. Right.
Constantly.
Dr. Woodman.
I know we had a presentation at the Finance Committee meeting about the technology budget. Is everything that was presented there reflected in this budget?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I'm glad you're bringing that up. I hope at a later date, when the evening's a little younger, we can actually take a better look at technology too. Because technology on so many levels, or so many areas of our budget, such as debt or special education, it cuts across the different functions. And probably, it would be nice to be able to look at the expenditures, as well as some, I don't want to call it revenue, but some offsetting funds coming in the door.
Other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Murray.
Thank you.
Now the moment that we've all been waiting for. This is our first community input. When we step up to the podium, state the name, part of the township you reside in, and 4-minute limit.
Roland Lynn from Fort Washington. Excuse my beard, I haven't waited so long. Grew long. I've been coming to this township for over 50 years, or nearly 50 years. And I've been coming to the school board meetings for over 42 years. So I just thought maybe it'd be best if I introduce myself to some of the new members of the school board. I'm the Grinch that's coming to steal your Christmas. I just said a lot of things that are said at the school board meetings. But in retrospect, I've had 3 kids go through the school board, through the school system. All did well, all went to college, all have succeeded in their relative jobs. So my criticism is not always directed at the fact that you're always doing a bad job. But there are things that the community has to say that needs to be said. I came here tonight to talk about 3 things. They were all in newspaper articles, which I brought with me. But seeing that basically the 3 things were the cost of the mechanicals and the repairs to the geothermal unit, and many of us back when before the high school was built, we stood up as engineers and said this is nothing more than a good feeling idea. It doesn't have any reality, and it's a waste of time and money. And sure enough, we now have to pay hundreds of multiple thousands of dollars to repair what was just built. The second thing I wanted to talk about was this tiered classroom, or this discussion of the classroom curriculum with regard to the tiering or layering, however you want to put it. Tracking is another way of putting it. And some of the backroom deals that were done and the illegitimate promises that were made outside of the public discourse. And I also wanted to address a third issue, which was the performance profile scores that I saw in the Lambertville Gazette, which I also brought with me. But however, recognizing the school board's low tolerance for public dissent and your high tolerance for censoring by time limitation, I'll necessarily probably have to come back at another time and do all 3 of them. But let's talk about the performance issues. Amherst Gazette, first page. It says, if you look at the actual, and I'm sure other people here will talk about other things that's in here, but just take a look at this first page. High school performance profiles scores: 101.8 for Wissahickon, 84.9 for Upper Dublin. That translates to 16.6% difference between Wissahickon and Upper Dublin. Now, we heard a lot today about performance, and I'm sure that there are reasons. The ones that I heard tonight were basically methodology of how you test. But I would point out to you that all the schools that were listed in another page of the Upper Gazette, which we'll hear about later, we're all under the same domain of having to answer the same questions. Thank you for my 4 minutes. Just enough time to shave. So if there are any reasons for the performance that I see in the Amherst Gazette, just remember that that's a significant amount of material, of numbers that represent a decline in where Upper Dublin was. But here's my major problem. My major problem is when we were doing well and when reports were coming in that we were number 2 in the town, in the district, we were only next to Lower Merion in our results. I can remember the school board union, school board of the union having meetings and saying, look how good we're doing. Because of all the things that we've done well, we deserve more money, we deserve to have the benefits that accrue to us because of the good things that we have accomplished in this township based on statistics. But the statistics show that we're not doing that well. Where is the union and where are you when it says, let's have a reduction in the 69.6% that is in our budget for salaries, benefits, and debt service?
So when your time is up right now.
Yes, I realize that. Merry Christmas.
To you too.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. Not sure I'm as articulate as I would like to be after 9:30. But those were 2 very important and very informative presentations. I'm going to start with the second one, work my way back if I have time. This wasn't really in there, I don't think, but related to the budget. I keep thinking about what may or may not happen with the Sandy Run project. But there's some gaping holes in my mind as to how any such project, whether it's 20 million, 40 million, 60 million, would be financed. So my first question is, what is our current amount of debt? Not the debt service, but what is the actual amount of debt that we still have from the high school? Anything else that's left over before the high school? And my next question is, what is the amount of additional debt that Upper Dublin is allowed to take? And I don't know, I know it's late, but if you could just give maybe a brief explanation of how that's calculated. I know I think it's based partly on our revenues, but also our current debt. So back to just to make sure you understand the question, what's the amount of additional debt that Upper Dublin School District can take on? And what I'm asking is, without a referendum. I realize that if you put it to a referendum, we're in a separate category. And explain the formula a little bit. Okay, that's it for budget. On the testing, again, I'm just like rolling with, this one's November 15th, Amherst Gazette. The testing report was very informative. It's good that you're digging into details. I could have a ton of questions, but there's not enough time. So let me just go back to the Amherst Gazette. The first thing it says, Wissahickon High School ranks highest in the state. That's great for them. Upper Dublin sees drop from previous year is the subhead. And I don't think that was anywhere in the report. I'm not sure it was. I mean, maybe I was falling asleep, I don't know, but it does say that we are, this year we got 84.9, that's our school performance profile. But last year was 91.3. So you really almost have to read this to get that information. I think that should be in there, what we were last year, what we are this year. And there's a whole lot of districts. What the Gazette did was just look at Montgomery County, mostly Montgomery County. And Wissahickon did better than us, Marion, Methacton, Plymouth Whitemarsh, Shouterton, North Penn, there's others. So that brings me to a question. The question is, where do we stand? Wissahickons number 1. What is our rank? What is Upper Dublin's rank in the state using the school performance profile number, which is 84.9%? Thanks.
Hello, good evening. My name is Julia Watt. My husband and I live on Summit Avenue. We have 3 children, 2 at Fort Washington, a 3rd grader and a 1st grader. And I have a 1.5-year-old at home, so this is a little late in the evening. I'm here for 3 concerns. First being, I'm concerned about the increase of technology use in our district. We all know the great benefits of technology, but we also know that too much screen time can impede on brain development in growing children, cause sensory overload, impact sleep, as well as negatively impact social language development. I'm a speech and language pathologist. I worked in school districts before I had my 3rd child, so I know greatly about language development, attention, language processing. So this is just an area of concern as I see technology being so easily accessible to our children, especially in our very young ones. The feedback that I'm getting around the community doesn't seem so positive. I'm hearing things like kids are playing games on their Chromebooks during middle school class, homework's taking so much longer, they're not getting the sleep that they need at night. Kids are contacting their teacher via Chromebook during class rather than raising their hand and actually socially engaging in people. So my question is, there is a social cost to using technology too much, and as these Chromebooks have been rolled out this year, I'd like to know who is and how are we monitoring the the overall screen time per student for each class as well as homework. If this is not being done, how can this be implemented? We need to make sure that our students are being taught to be competent social beings. Second concern, while we spend more money and time on increased technology, I'd also like to know what's being done to increase students' interpersonal skills and emotional regulation. Great to see all of the student athletes tonight and such, as that's a great area for them to grow. We need to consider more outdoor time, not take away time from valuable programs like Robbins Park. Research shows that when children are given more outdoor time, test scores rise. How about more recess time? By the time our little first graders get out to recess, they're out there for 10, 15 minutes, and then they're back in the school building. How about just adding 5 minutes to each of those recess times? The kids are bursting out of Fort Washington at the end of the school day because they just are craving that outdoor air. Another idea, approach to consider is the use of mindfulness. I know we all know about this. The impact that daily mind breaks can be for students' attention, emotional well-being, and test scores is quite notable. Local Montgomery County public schools have adapted this, Erdenheim Elementary, as well as Jenkintown School District. And last concern is to speak about the task force committee. I'm here to advocate about our beloved neighborhood schools. As I said, we live on Summit Avenue. One of the reasons why we bought our home was because of our neighborhood for Washington School. A little snapshot at the end of dismissal at our school at the end of the day. There's parents, tons of them, conversing with each other, developing relationships with other moms and dads of their kids' friends. Siblings are running around hugging their parents. Neighborhood kids are playing football. There's bike riders, skateboarders, scooters. If this was taken away, this would be definitely detrimental to this Upper Dublin community. As we continue to see our taxes being raised, our K-5 setup, right now allows for a sense of community, lasting friendships, incredible programming like the speed stacking competition, grade buddies, K-5, town hall meetings, wax museum. So, as a parent and taxpayer, I trust that you will make cost-conscious decisions for this committee. And at the last task force meeting, there was well over 15 parents from Fort Washington. And
Please finish up, Mr. Zelinski.
Thank you. The next meeting is being held on the same night as our students' orchestra. I kindly ask you to reconsider that date so that we can attend. So I look forward to hearing from your question, about your answers regarding the monitoring of screen time, more recess, and another date for the. Thank you.
Community input, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close community input. Starting with Mr. Lynn. Is there anything to say regarding the geothermal repairs?
We've had a number of meetings regarding with the firm that installed the HVAC system, as well as some the equipment. It's not just all about the geothermal, it's also the equipment that carries the conditioned air from throughout the building, and you'll be hearing more about that as we move on. Certainly, it's not exactly, we did not anticipate this at all, but we are working to find out what the cause is and to resolve any of the issues that have contributed to it.
Okay, regarding Mr. Lynn's question on track 3, I think we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the Education Committee recommendations with Dr. Ludwig. Comments regarding the SPP scores? Morris?
Comments from Mr. Lynn regarding our school performance profile?
Yes.
I apologize, but I didn't hear a question, and so I'm not entirely sure, Mr. Lynn, but I'd be happy to speak to you after the meeting. I do believe that we recognize verbally that our scores have dropped I think that there are many different data points out there, and it depends which data source you use. Clearly, school performance profile is showcasing some area high schools, and we are working to make sure that we do as well in our school performance profile as we're doing on some other measures, like our Newsweek state rankings, for example.
On that topic, also Ms. Brisker asked about where we stand, I assume, in the county and possibly in the state too, with SPP. So
I do not have that data, but I did say both verbally that we had dropped, and we're disappointed with our new score. Also, if you go on the SPP site, under the tabs, the old score is clearly noted as well as the new score.
okay, and regarding the SPP, if you're interested, I urge you to go online, take a look about how our scores are calculated. There's new categories, which is closing the achievement gap. This is the first year they're reporting those scores. You can get a maximum of 10 points for closing the achievement gap. We received less than 1 point, so we lost nearly 10 points on that score alone. We can talk for hours about why, but I won't say why at this point. I'll just say our scores went down predominantly because of the new categories called closing the achievement gap, all students, and then the other category, the top category. And that is available to look at. And especially it's helpful if you have last year's SPP, which I do have, if anybody wants to sit down and take a look at that. So we lost almost 10 points on that alone. Most of our neighboring districts on closing the achievement gap got most of the 10 points. So 84.9 plus 10 would give us a very high score. And we're looking at what we can do in the future to do much better on closing the achievement gap. It was a new category that was used this year. That's why we went down.
I would just also point out, if you go onto that website, there's actually a lot of functionality. You can do a side-by-side comparison of Upper Dublin and how we scored on everything. Any other school district in the state, how they scored. Actually, I think you can do multiple schools. So you can pick any of them and just go side-by-side and see exactly where we stand against any school.
Anything else on the SPP?
Just to point out again that the scores, the way that is computed, some of those scores are several years old, and the work that we have done in curriculum development in the last few years and working on our instructional practice, we believe that we are moving in the right direction toward improving those.
Okay, and then Ms. Watt's comments, increased technology, screen time, the social cost of using tech. What are we doing to evaluate the time that our children are using the technology, suffering with the interpersonal skills, outdoor time versus what technology is doing, Mr. B?
Okay, well, I'll tackle the first part. I think the other about recess and outdoor time, it's an issue that everyone can chime in on. With technology, our approach is an evaluative one that's really tiered with a developmental mindset. It's part of why our plan, our proposal for next year is really to replace the older equipment we have, to have more appropriate equipment for the early grades, but not go one-to-one in those grades, right? So to have shared classroom sets, teachers can access. That's because we're learning from the schools that have gone ahead of us. So schools that go ahead of us and they get an iPad for every child, and then there's regret. We didn't really need this much technology. It's more developmentally appropriate for kids to do manipulatives, to keep their hands, and interact. On that rainy day of resets, in those one-on-one schools, the kids all run for their iPads instead of the big tub of Legos that they used to beg for, right? And so we don't want to go down that path. We want to remove the barrier for our teachers for that intentional and appropriate use, but not buy more tech than we need, for several reasons, both developmental for the children, pedagogical, and financial. Guiding our early childhood is the work of the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And they have a great study out, a position paper on that intentional and appropriate use. So again, we're having that research inform us, and we're having the needs of our teachers inform us. At the secondary level, or 5th grade up, we've been doing a lot, and that's been a lot of my fault, is working carefully with teachers. And part of it is staff development. As an example, I was working with a teacher in their class. We came in, I asked the students to fill out their Chromebooks. We used them for 5 minutes, and then I asked them to close their Chromebooks and get in small groups, discuss, come back, right? Because there's something very powerful that happens when you're working face to face. We go away from our devices. This is why, as adults, we sit down at meetings, and periodically the person leading the meeting says, "Could everyone put away their devices?" Right? We need to stop looking at email and talk to each other. And that teacher said, I just forgot how simple that was, right? So in our conversations with students and teachers 5th through 12, for the most part, it's a very positive narrative. It's a narrative of I'm able to give this feedback to my kids in a more timely fashion. I've closed that feedback loop. I'm able to differentiate, and I'm able to have my students engage in a higher order of thinking. It's not without its problems, though, right? So with this implementation, there's a lot of new, there's a lot of unanticipated classroom management issues, right? Resolved really by the age-old, can I walk around? And we have monitoring tools. None of them are as efficient as the relationship that the teacher has with their students. I'm going to walk around. And so that has been a learning curve. And kudos to both students and teachers, because they're doing a fabulous job. Along with that positive narrative, I've heard what you've heard as well. And we're addressing that. We're addressing that really through our work with teachers, our work with students, my work in meeting with classes. I'm meeting with grade levels, I'm meeting with all the 5th grades, and then I'm meeting with all the 6th grades, 7th grade, having that conversation with those students. Building that balance into our pedagogy. When you go to a school, a district that has been one-to-one for a while, you'll walk in and you'll see a lot of what we're seeing right now. The device is kind of like this, right? It's here to the side, it's a shared tool we're using, but we're really going face to face, grabbing paper, we're grabbing cardboard. It's much more of, it's lost its initial wow and zing, and then it's like, no, it's a tool for learning, and learning's hard work, right? And we'll be there very quickly. And I say that with confidence. I had a lot of trepidation early, so I know how long and hard it is to move a culture. This culture is exceptional. There is a partnership with administration, faculty, students, families that I haven't seen. I haven't just seen it be this smooth before. I always have to knock on something. But I appreciate the sentiment because it justifies a lot of the work that we're doing with curriculum, technology, with administrative leaders, and with our kids. So I hope that answers your question, but if not, and you weren't at the presentation that I did when I presented sort of our model moving forward with elementary, I'm happy to share that with you. That narrative.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg.
Someone else want to tackle recess? Because I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan of recess too. I wish I had recess. Yes, 3 hours and 15 minutes.
And then a 70-degree December, and it's perfect.
It's a good thing. I don't think we have anybody from the elementary schools.
I can't speak to, I can't speak to recess, but I can speak to the ways that we're putting a more physical curriculum into our schools. We are looking at expanding our elementary learning lab around, that comes out through our PE teacher in conjunction with the classroom teacher that we've been using at Thomas Fitzgerald for example, jumping from ladder rung to ladder rung along the floor while working on site works. So we're very sensitive to the need for students to move, and I would concur with Mr. Vinogrado. Outside time is really important as well.
Okay, and then the comment, Ms. Bristow's question regarding debt service, what we can borrow. We do have the most, we just completed the bond sale part 1, and in this documentation, I think does answer your questions. Do you want to? I can. I mean, I have the document here.
Certainly, as of June 30th, 2015, total debt outstanding was $118,190,000. The calculation that you were referring to, Mrs. Brister, is what's known as the borrowing base and the capacity related to that. And it takes 3 years revenue. You add the last 3 years together, and then you average those 3 years, and then the legal limit is 225% of that average number. And as Dr. Levinowitz said, it's in the most recent OS, the calculation through that. So essentially, our remaining capacity, because almost all of our debt, remaining debt is electoral debt, in the remaining capacity is $194,382,416 as of June 30th, 2016, or 15, sorry.
Now, we can talk about it later. Yeah. Most of our debt is electoral debt.
Our remaining capacity is $194 million that we can borrow without a referendum. That is correct.
But we can't raise taxes over a certain amount. So if we need to raise taxes over a certain amount to borrow that, it would have to go out and referendum. So it depends on what we've saved in terms of what we can borrow. But surely our capacity is more than we would ever borrow. We right now have currently it's at least 183 million according to the book. That subtracts the 9.9 of our current debt, so it goes down to 183.
And the reason why the amount is slightly different than what I mentioned is because we had debt payments in November. I've given the amount, they'll be in our audited financials as of June 30, 2015. You're looking at a post payment on November 15th.
Right.
November 13th.
So I think you'd find this chart very interesting. It shows our debt over the next 10 years and how the electoral debt does go away in 10 years, basically. It's gone. We cannot, borrow that. We cannot use that money in the future to take out additional debt. So.
What that doesn't say, if I understood the question.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
What that doesn't say is what we could actually afford without
that will be a topic that we'll discuss at the restructuring task force meeting. And we're still looking at that. What can we borrow? Depends on the time, when we do it, and other issues.
And that subject may not actually explicitly address as we're looking at grade alignment.
Right.
That will be further down the
Correct.
road.
Right.
Probably finance committee, I think.
The finance committee will be looking at that, correct?
The question of the date, I understand it was brought to my attention that the date selected for the next task force meeting is not optimal for one of our elementary schools. However, this is a district-wide committee, and this is what will work best from that perspective. But I've also offered to meet with anyone who has to miss that meeting for whatever reason. I'll be happy to meet with you and review what was said, take your input. So we're working around that as best we can.
Unfortunately, there will always be conflicts. I think when we schedule the next meeting, we will definitely not do it on the night that Fort Washington has an event. Another school will probably be affected, possibly. If you look at our calendar.
We also will be working on the convenience of our speakers, so their schedules also play a role in this.
Okay. Any other comments from the board before we move on to the agenda tonight? Okay. Let us begin with the Education Committee, Dr. Ludwig. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I got you. No, I'm there. Announcements and communications, Ms. Bray.
This evening, there is an announcement that the board met last Monday, December the 7th, to reorganize. It's a requirement. And at that particular meeting on December the 7th, Dr. Levitowitz was re-elected for his third term, I believe, as board president. And Dr. Ludwig was elected as the vice president. And Ms. Evans was elected as the assistant secretary.
Okay. Anything else on announcements and communications?
Not this evening.
Okay, minutes.
I would appreciate a motion and a second to approve the November 9th, 2015 legislative meeting minutes, as well as meeting minutes for October 27th from facilities, October 22nd for finance, and November 2nd education committee minutes, please.
Okay, we have a motion. Who's that?
So moved. Ms. Good.
Ms. Good, sorry. Okay, second? Ms. Rothman, second. Okay, any comments or questions? Approval of the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, now we are ready to begin the Education Committee report and recommendations. Dr. Ludwig.
There are four motions for the Education Committee. All of them were discussed at the Education Committee meeting, so I'm not going to go into them all. I would like to move that we approve number 1, 2, and 4. And then I'll take 3 separately.
Is there a second? 1, 2, and 4. Second, Mr. Sirota. Any comments or questions on items 1, 2, and 4? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Item 3.
Taking item 3 separately, item 3 is the motion to approve the restructuring in 9th grade in 2016-17 and in 10th grade in 2017-18.
Okay, is there a second? Second. Mr. Sirota. Comments or questions? Dr. Ludwig?
I wanted to talk about this for a minute because I think we've been working on this for a long time, and a lot of people have weighed in, and I think we are at the point now where we are really ready to consider this. When I first started thinking about this issue about 10 years ago as a member of the EAC, when the school district started thinking about detracking. Although I agreed in principle with the idea of providing equity of opportunity, and I understood that the problem of having low expectations for people in the lowest track classes, I had reservations at the beginning when I was thinking about this, about whether it would water down the curriculum for the more advanced students. However, by doing a fair amount of research, reading the literature, listening to the various arguments, and in particular, a book by Burris and Garrity, reading that. The book is called Detracking for Excellence and Equity, which described the experience of the school district in Rockville Center on Long Island. I really began to change my mind. It and some of the other studies that I read showed that heterogeneous groupings really can increase the achievement of all students without compromising the learning of the high achievers. However, it also made clear that detracking is a complex reform that requires careful planning, gradual introduction, listening to and addressing the concerns of parents and teachers, and putting supports in place. So for me, the question right now, tonight, is have we put the processes and the supports in place to make this plan successful? And my answer is that we are prepared. And I wanted to go through some of the things that have happened over the last year to kind of give a summary of what we the district, have done to prepare. So there are a number of things that we're identifying what needed to be done. looking at what peer districts have done, finding out that 20 of our neighboring districts have already restructured, and they have been able to narrow the achievement gap and improve their test scores. And that includes Wissahickon, which was mentioned earlier. There were a number of site visits to schools in the region that have been tracked successfully to learn what worked there. There was a survey of the faculty and gathering input on what was needed and what the staff thought was necessary to make them prepared. There were inputs from parents, including a report by the EAC. Based on some of those things, there's been professional development on differentiated instruction, flexible grouping, and formative assessment. And that was really in response to the needs that teachers identified. There was a lot of work on curriculum to align curriculum with the standards, create common assessments, grading rubrics to ensure that classes are really not watered down. Chromebook initiative, which helps facilitate flexible groupings and personalized learning. A number of other supports for both students and teachers. We've talked a lot about the plan for co-teaching in the majority of the academic level courses. There's been work with high school planning to enhance tutoring opportunities. There have been, this I think has already been introduced, content area reading classes for 9th graders who need extra support. There's a plan for informal teaming that will help the staff understand what the needs of students are. There is planning for increased collaboration time for teachers in core subjects. There is provisions for instructional coaching for teachers for differentiated instruction. And the last area that I think, in terms of preparation, there have been presentations and discussions with the community. There was a presentation of the plan in April of the board meeting. There was a presentation in July by Dr. Wheeler talking about the state of the district. There was a presentation to the Education Committee in August. There have been updates and discussions at education committees through the fall. There have been presentations at PTO and PTA meetings. And on November 5th, there was a community forum. So in summary, I think it will require hard work by teachers to change their teaching practice. It may require changes along the way as it becomes clear what is working and what additional changes are needed. But I'm convinced we're ready to move forward at this point with all the preparation we've done, and so I support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ludwig. Any other comments on this item? Okay, we have first, then we got a second. Correct? Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, this is item 3, approve the restructuring of grade 9 and 16-17, and grade 10 and 17-18. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the education.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Love. Moving on to our rather lengthy facilities report tonight. Mr. Shaleski's not here. Ms. Good, can you handle that? Student services? Sorry about that. We go home. Okay, technology, Mr. Steele.
Nothing for technical.
Okay, student services, Mr. Kim.
Student services is just one motion to approve educational placement and educational agreements. To authorize payment for tuition and education expenses for placement in a private special education school for special education student at DeVilla in the amount not to exceed $32,500 for the 2015-16 school year for students IEP. Second, to authorize for approval of educational services agreement between the district and the parents of the special education student for tuition, independent placement in the amount of $34,900 to extend the school year, and the amount of $4,100, independent education evaluation in the amount of $3,800, and legal fees in the amount of $22,500, totaling $65,300 for the 2015-16 school year. This is in lieu of a free and
Okay, first, Mr. Kim, second.
Second.
Dr. Ludwig. Any comments or questions on the student services section? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, now we're moving on to Landfill Facilities Committee. Ms. Good?
There's one motion to, and it's our standard approval of the disposal of excess, obsolete, non-repairable equipment. This will be available from December 15th to January 14th for inspection.
Okay.
That's it.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Good? Ms. Murphy? Okay. Any comments or questions on the line item facilities? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to finance, I will take finance. Dr. Resnick needed to leave early. You should make note of that in the votes. Okay, finance, these are all new items. Do we need to do the budget separately?
No, not as long as it's clear what the votes are in terms of how they're recorded.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to move the entire finance report forward. Item 1 is the treasurer's report, standard treasurer's report. Item 2, the vouchers list. 3 is the published 2016-2017 preliminary budget. There's 2 steps in that process, and then we make the budget available for public inspection no later than December 22nd. Item 4 was discussed briefly earlier tonight, which is an agreement with Direct Energy, which could result in some significant savings for the district. 5 is some additional, some spring sports equipment. 6, to approve Superior Bus Inc. to provide transportation services only when our regular drivers are unable to fulfill those commitments that we have with sporting events.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay. And then 7 is the contract with the Villa for this school year, 2015 through 2016, I believe it should be. Not 15 to 15, right?
Correct.
Okay. There is.
Just making sure. It's 15, 16.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Correct.
Fix that. Okay, so my motion is to approve the entire finance report. Make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's also one correction before we do the finance.
Yes, sir.
On the first treasurer's report, Ms. Burian mentioned that the food service financial report is for October 2000.
October rather than November stated.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions on finance?
I
Sure.
have a quick question. Sure. On the treasurer's report, on 7,000 state subsidies, this year to date, we're at about 2.3 million. Last year at this point, we were at 4.2. Is that the state budget impasse?
I need a little bit of time to find it, but yes, I'm sure that it is. Are we talking about within the comparative statements?
So about, we received about $1.9 million less this year than last year from the state.
It's because of the budget impasse, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have first and a second for the finance report tonight. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to number 4, personnel report. Ms. Good.
Yeah, I'd like to take the entire personnel report, which is page 4 through basically the top of page 7 as one motion. But I would like to also just point out that we are appointing tonight a new school psychologist, and will start in February, and he's here this evening. This is Ray Casper, and I have to basically thank him for sitting through this entire meeting and putting up with this. We'd like to welcome you, and in any event, I just wanted to acknowledge his presence here tonight.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the entire personnel report. There's a second? Okay. Okay, any comments or questions? I just want to point out item 1 with NovaCare rehabilitation. And I just want to commend someone who's been with us for so long, and even though she's working with someone else, we really feel that Katie is part of the Upper Dublin family, and we do appreciate that she's been able to stay with us for so many years, and we look forward to her continuing her work with the district. And again, Katie's like family here in Upper Dutton, so thank you for everything you do, Katie. Anything else we need to point out? Okay, Act 93. As to say, first part of this is also the approval of the Act 93 staff. Can you make some comments on that?
Yes, this is a one-year agreement. This will replace the current agreement that expires December 31st of 2015. If you recall, when we went with this last agreement, we switched the dates to January 1 to December 31st so that we could more appropriately use the new evaluation system for principals, assistant principals, superintendents, and other educators using the new PDE instrument, which includes the school performance profile score that is received in the fall, so that can be taken into consideration, and that result comes in the fall. We adjusted, the agreements to be in place for January 1st through December 31st. Pretty much of the agreement remains the same with, teachers, administrators and supervisors of the group matching teachers' contributions towards benefits. And we used to have in place something called a corridor, which really wasn't working well. It was based upon where they would be on the teacher's scale, and then a differential for the number of days that they worked to receive additional compensation, and merit or performance was included in that calculation. Instead, we're taking a different approach of looking at the Montgomery County schools information and looking at the average that the market is paying for each position, and using that as a basis, making sure that our administrators are remaining competitive in the county, so that we're not losing administrators to other districts for higher pay, but at the same time keeping it in relationship to like new administrators starting probably at 85% of that average, and more seasoned administrators, and after proving years of performance being closer to probably 120% of that average. All increases, though, will really come back to three components in the new system. One is if we need to make an adjustment for salaries in the county, as determined by the superintendent and myself, and recommendation and approval of the board, of course. The second is performance, how the administrator and supervisor performs their work for the past year. And thirdly, in the event that an administrator shows above and beyond the normal expectations, a non-recurring merit bonus that would not be built into the base salary and would not be eligible for boosters and so on. As I say, it really is for those exceptional years where somebody really goes above and beyond the expectations for the position. So using those three components, that will really determine what each administrator receives as far as an increase, taking everything that I described into consideration.
Okay, thank you. And anything else from the personnel report? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the entire personnel report, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, at this point, Ms. Good, did Mr. Casper want?
You're welcome to come up and comment.
You've earned the right to.
Exactly.
You have 4 minutes.
I'll need less than that, it's 10:30.
I thought so.
I just wanted to thank the entire school board of directors, Mr. Sigafus, Mrs. Clay, student services and special education departments, as well as the rest of the entire review committee for selecting me for this position. I'm very excited to begin this opportunity in Upper Dublin, and I hope to contribute to its continued reputation of excellence. So, although I don't have an official start date at this time, for now I'll just say happy holidays, happy new year, and I'm looking forward to getting started soon. Thank you. Thanks again.
Well, you also you're in a winning team. I think our football team beat Garnet Valley. One of the many schools that we did beat. So. Welcome aboard. And just a brief comment about the Act 93 staff is that, we do recognize that we have some wonderful administrators here in the district. The Act 93 represents just about all of the administrators except for Ms. Bray, Mr. Sigafus, and Dr. Wheeler. And we're very, very proud of the staff, of the administrators that we have, and we do appreciate all the work that they do. And this board does realize how hard you do work to for the children in the school district of Upper Dublin, and we thank you all for your commitment to Upper Dublin. Okay. We are now moving on to policy. Ms. Rothman.
Thank you. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First, I make a motion for all these things, but to approve a second reading and adoption of policies 122, policy 004, 004.1, and policy 301.1. All of these items were back in November at our legislative meeting and came through first reading and were approved at that point. The second item in the motion tonight is approved first reading of policy 005, which is organization. If you look at that policy, there were some redundancies taken out, and most of the items that were removed will be put into the administrative regulation that we'll see next month. Policy 121, which is student foreign travel programs. We spoke about this a little bit at the last education committee meeting. There's a line added to allow the superintendent to halt an overseas trip if in case of such an emergency or a safety concern. And we also for the repeal, I think 007, I don't think this necessarily needs a second reading. I think that we can repeal it in one. This is policy 007.
It doesn't.
It needs some, okay, thanks. All right, so for a first reading for the repeal of policy 007, this has been consolidated in policy 000, which was previously adopted by the board earlier this year. And the third item for the motion tonight is to approve the administrative regulations for 122 and 004. Those accompany the second reading policies tonight.
Okay, the motion is made. Mr. Hoffman, second by Mr. Kemp. Comments or questions?
I really would appreciate if there is some way we can make it so that what is distributed electronically is maybe a PDF that has the strikeouts, because I think I've had time to look at these, but I really don't think it's fair to vote on something that we haven't gotten ahead of time. And I'm almost ready to abstain because I don't think I've had enough time to look at them. But I think I am able to vote tonight, but I really would like that to be the case in the future. I'm not sure what it takes.
I think what happened that we found out earlier tonight was that this was distributed first via Google Docs. And when you do not have editing power assigned, you do not see the red line version. So being on the policy committee, although we don't use it in caution of sunshine act rules, the policy committee has been given editing power so we can see the red line documents. We were unaware that there was an issue for other board members that weren't given editing power, so didn't see red line documents. So that's something that we can easily correct for next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we have policy committee. We have first, we have a second. This is the second reading for 4 policies and first reading for 3 policies, and then the approval of the ARs for 122 and 04. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we are moving. Other business recommendations. I don't believe we have any tonight for the board. Moving on to our liaison committee reports. Mr. Chmielewski is not here for the IU. Ms. Hester, anything with the Montgomery County Legislative Committee? I can't hear you.
We met on November 19th at NCIU, and
And at that time, basically the legislature, the governor, have been in the process of negotiations, but we are still at an impasse. There was a recommendation that some board members from as well, boards throughout the state, as well as superintendents, meet in Harrisburg to meet with our legislators to discuss the issue with regard to funding and education. The next meeting will be January 12th in CIU.
Okay, thank you. Eastern Center for Arts and Technology, at our last meeting last week, we did approve a significant facilities projects, I should say. We did the final approval of the vet science renovation in our landscaping building across from the administration, from our main building. It is anticipated that that work will be done before the summer, and we'll be advertising a new program at Eastern called Veterinary Science. We're also doing renovations in the heating and cooling in our main building, and also some other facility work throughout the building. So our next meeting, we do not meet in January. We will meet in February. Is that right?
February is correct.
February will be our next meeting. EAC, Dr. Ludwig.
The EAC met on December 2nd, and they're progressing on the reports that they're working on. The next meeting was changed from the first Wednesday to the second Wednesday of January. That would be January 13th.
Thank you. PTA, PTO liaison, just an announcement that in the assigning the liaison committee representatives, Robert Kim will be taking the lead. I'm sure Mark will still be involved, but Robert Kim will be doing the reporting and probably attending as many meetings as possible, along with other board members.
Yeah, the only announcement will be is that on January 20th at 7 p.m. the Cardinal will be at PTA Summit. We'll be discussing the state of technology for the district.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shimoleski is not here to report on township business. Upper Delta Education Foundation is good.
Just briefly, we met on November 24th, and it is the annual appeal season. So our annual appeal letters have gone out, and we are greatly appreciative of any support the community gives us, and we're on hiatus until the end of January.
Okay, thank you. Solicitor's report, Mr. Roos. Okay, this comes to our second community input. Anybody would like to address the board? Kindly step up to the podium. State your name, part of the township you represent.
Good evening. Jerome McGriff, Ambler, Upper Dublin, whichever way you want to look at it. First off, I'd like to say thank you for accepting the tracking. It's long overdue. But one of the things I didn't hear in the acceptance was whether or not certain elements were going to be removed from what basically becomes the blocking that happens in the junior high school. Essentially, are the AEA forms going to be taken out of the process where people have to choose, have to request permission to get into the classes, one, and two, what is going to be done at the middle school level to prepare the kids for the high school, and three, I guess, what process is going to be put in place to basically gear up the kids. And the last point is I didn't hear, based on the original plan that I think you guys agreed to tonight, what's going to be done for basically STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. From what I recall, it sounded like the science area was still going to have 4 classes to it, which to me doesn't, it kind of addresses the tracking, but it doesn't. Thank you.
Is there any other community input? Okay, we will close community input. Any listeners' questions? Mr. Morrison?
Thank you for your comment, Mr. McBride. Personally, I am also excited that we're
speak up a little bit?
I personally am also very excited that we're moving to fewer tracks at our high school next year and the year after. We are not removing AEAs at this time. However, we are developing a very robust data set for placement between 8th and 9th grade. In the past, the recommendations were based on final grades after second semester. 8th grade teachers are now identifying common assessments around skills so that when the professional recommendation is made, there are many data points that can be discussed with students and with teachers around placement. Also, as part of that process, 8th and 9th grade teachers are meeting together to look at assessments both in 8th and 9th grade so that everyone is very clear about the skill set that is to be developed through 8th grade and into 9th grade. And I think that both of those things will help students as they transition into the high school.
And I believe our guidance department will be appearing at the education committee meeting in January, and the AEA form will be one of the items up for review at that point.
Question about STEM. I'm not sure how that relates to the restructuring. Science. There's a question about science.
Currently in our senior and middle school science program for students in regular education, there is no tracking. And with our move for 9th grade biology, we'll go from one level of science in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade into 2 levels of science in 9th grade. We do have currently 2 levels of mathematics in 6th grade. Students are going from 1 level in 5th grade to 2 in 6th, with the exception of the students who are accelerated. That's something that we've been looking into and trying to understand the data and to figure out how we can best support students as they move through our mathematics program.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Vinogradov? Anything to add about STEM or market fair or anything? Any plans or anything we're looking at?
Actually, I can add a further comment. Mr. Philip Vinogradov and I met with Sandy Run with their technology department to think about ways, and I alluded to this earlier, that we can start providing students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade a design thinking approach to technology that would include, for example, skills in coding, as well as other things that Mr. Vinogradov would be able to better describe. Again, in that class would be for all students.
So we really are trying to hack the technology education, which in our generation was shot. The business and information technology teacher who teaches computers, right? And to make that, to create a course that really teaches design thinking, programming, and that cross-curricular innovation. So an Uber STEM.
Thank you. I think we answered all of Mr. McGriff's questions.
One other.
No, I'm sorry, sir. No, we're done, sir. You can come up and ask any of us a question, but that I closed community input. Okay, I'd like to announce that the facilities meeting for December 17th has been canceled. There is not a facilities meeting on the 17th. We will have our finance committee meeting that night on the 17th at 6 p.m. Policy will be December 21st at 1:30, Cardinal Room. And our education committee will be meeting Monday, January 4th. Is that correct? Okay. At 6 p.m. I believe in Cardinal Room. Next legislative meeting will be January 11th at 7 p.m. in Cardinal Room. Seeing no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Rothman, second?
Second.
Good, okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye, anyone opposed? Thank you.